Chapter 587. But, in the president's mansion, the Minister of Defense's hand trembled, and his phone fell on the table. He stood up stiffly and his eyes were blank as he said in a trembling voice, "Mr. President, this is bad. Zhang Qianlei has broken through the defense line." How is this possible? President Kuba could not believe it. He slammed the conference table and roared angrily, "Less than 10 minutes have passed since the start of the battle." The commanders of the Minister of Defense shook their heads regretfully and said, "He's like a real god. Our army can't stop him." President Kuba slumped in his chair as the details of the battle were reported. "I've let down the 10 million citizens of Sidoni. I'm a sinner of history. Prepare the planes." The next moment he stood up and pointed at the Minister of Defense. "Now, I give Minister Kane full authority to take over Sidoni's affairs. I want to build a government in exile and seek help from England." This guy was also good at pushing the blame to others and he was very good at running away. The Minister of Defense suddenly looked behind President Kuba with a strange expression. He said in a trembling voice, "Mr. President, I'm afraid your order is a little late." President Kuba turned around and saw a muscular man with black hair and yellow skin. He was dressed in strange green clothes. The man had his legs crossed and was sitting on the chair behind him. He had a cigar in his mouth that he had gotten from somewhere and was puffing out smoke. He was very arrogant. Next to him, a black child of 5 or 6 years old pointed at Zhang Qianlei and looked at the president with a trembling voice. The former Daoist master of the Republic of China, the sect master of the Daoist master sect at Dragon Tiger Mountain in Wuxia, a half-step immortal, the second most powerful person in Wuxia, second only to Kong Teichu. The handsome and peerless Master Zhang Qianlei greets the president. Poor little Arthur. He had been spanked 3 times in order to remember Zhang Qianlei's narcissistic and coquettish self-introduction. President Kuba staggered a few steps back as if he was avoiding a snake. He smiled and said, "Master Zhang, the master from Wuxia. From now on you're Sidoni's Grand Master. What do you think?" Zhang Qianlei said lazily, "I want you to announce that the K and Longevity tribes in Khas Lake are now independent. The government army will never invade that place." Of course. President Kuba was overjoyed when he heard that and he agreed readily. He didn't care about the bullshit Longevity tribe and the legendary blood orchid that could make people become immortals. A few monsters had appeared there decades ago. Whether it was the British colonial army or Sidoni's government forces, they had never been able to occupy it. Even without those dozens of square kilometers, he still had a vast territory of 640,000 square kilometers. Kuba, are you crazy? The Longevity tribe and blood orchid should belong to the United Kingdom and the European Union. British MI6 Special Envoy, Captain Wilson of the Royal Navy shouted in exasperation. "I want you to give the order to use the bombers to blow up the Khas Lake camp and the Longevity tribe. Kong Teichu and Wuxia must not be spared. Wilson, as you can see, if we don't agree we will die." President Kuba said resentfully. "Wuxia is one of the strongest countries in the world. We can't afford to offend them. And they were Wuxia's super soldiers. Who knew if they represented Wuxia's official intentions? I can't afford to offend him." Bang! Wilson suddenly pointed his finger. A blazing light appeared out of thin air and exploded President Kuba's head. Then he glanced at the stunned generals and said proudly, "I announce that from now on I, British MI6 Special Envoy, Glorious Paladin under the Palace of Gods, Wilson, will be Sidoni's 8th president. Carry out the order." So he's a paladin. The generals were shocked and terrified. They stood there like wooden blocks. They did not know if they should carry out the order immediately or wait to see Zhang Qianlei's attitude. "Oh, I forgot. There's still an invader from Wuxia who hasn't been killed yet." Wilson walked toward Zhang Qianlei with large strides. He smiled proudly and said in Mandarin, "Zhang Qianlei, I know who you are, but aren't you afraid of the Palace of God's attack? They're already on their way. A paladin is nothing." Zhang Qianlei shook his head and said disdainfully, "If you know what's good for you, get lost quickly. Don't be a dog in the manger." "You're not leaving? Then I'll kill you. Let your ugly and depraved soul be cleansed." Wilson shouted coldly. He grabbed the cross in front of his chest and threw it toward Zhang Qianlei. Divine punishment light thorn. A blazing, dazzling and holy light pierced towards Zhang Qianlei like a sharp and heavy sword. Looks like your authority is still not enough. Don't you know that I killed a paladin during the Republic of China? Zhou Xian snorted and raised his hand to send a bolt of lightning over. I'm a member of the Temple of Gods. How dare you? The bolt of lightning in Wilson's eyes grew bigger and bigger. He screamed and was engulfed by the blazing lightning and turned into ashes. The high-ranking generals were confused and uneasy. President Kuba was killed by Wilson and they were all dumbfounded. Wilson, who had just been promoted and had not held a ceremony, was also killed by that bolt of lightning. In just a few minutes, the ups and downs were too exciting. Their minds were in a mess. Zhang Qianlei scratched his head in distress and mumbled, Jiangtun. He said that if they don't listen to me, I'll appoint a new leader. But he didn't say who it will be. Suddenly, his gaze fell on the shivering little Arthur. His face darkened and he said slowly in Mandarin, Little Arthur, from now on, you'll have to try to be a president. Little Arthur widened his eyes in disbelief. Too many things had happened in a day and a night. His mind was in a mess. Heavenly Master, I won't be a president. Little Arthur's long eyelashes drooped. He did not dare to look at Zhang Qianlei. For as long as he could remember, he had been hunting, fishing, and picking fruits in his tribe. When he was older, he was sent to the capital to work. He had been working as a doorman, a male servant, a cook, and a follower. Those jobs had nothing to do with the president, who had to deal with a lot of things every day. From a little servant to Mr. President, this leap was a little too big and it was easy to pull the egg. Being a president is much easier than catching fish. Even that loser who loves to write diaries can do it. You can do it too. Zhang Qianlei pressed his hands on little Arthur's shoulders, stared into his eyes and said seriously, Remember, your life only belongs to you. Just do what you want. I can write a diary, but this is also your Uncle Zhang's hope. Do you want to disappoint him? Zhang Qianlei was a little impatient. He had already rolled up his sleeves and was ready to spank little Arthur. I'm willing to listen to Mr. Jiang. Little Arthur nodded in confusion. Good. From now on he will be the president. Zhang Qianlei looked at the generals and said. After one of the interpreters translated his words into English, many of the generals were in a difficult position and began to discuss among themselves. Zhang Qianlei was annoyed. He suddenly raised his voice and said, What? You dare to disagree? Dear God, that's not what we mean. The translator, who was trembling with fear, said, Little Arthur is obviously not 18 years old. He doesn't have the right to vote or be elected. They are in a difficult position. Then think of a way. In any case, we want him to be the president. Zhang Qianlei said stubbornly. At this time, the Minister of Defense pulled the translator and spoke in English for a while. The translator said, There is a way. Sidonia is a constitutional monarchy. Whether it was during the British colonial period, the government army period, or the warlords period, there was always a king. He can't be the president, but he can be the king, and the king is not limited by age. However, Wang Chubo was still alive. And he is the leader of the rebel army. He looked like he was in a difficult position. He wanted to say something but hesitated. So what they mean is that little Arthur can't be the president because he is not the king's descendant? Zhang Qianlei frowned. According to the rules, this is the case. The translator said helplessly. It's not like the rules can't be changed. Zhang Qianlei was depressed. It seems that I have to discuss this matter with old monster Jiang. That kid is better at scheming than me. Mr. Zhang, before we came, Uncle Jiang said that you should hurry back to Cass Lake Camp. Next to him, little Arthur had no interest in being the president or king. He was afraid that Zhang Qianlei would force him to do something beyond his ability, so he quickly reminded him. Okay then. Let's go back first. Zhang Qianlei scratched his head, stood up and pointed at the Minister of Defense. You'll be the acting president for now, but remember, don't touch Cass Lake and don't touch Wuxia people. Otherwise, I'll teach you a lesson. Kang Teichu and the others are too scary. One person defeated tens of thousands of troops. Although the government army's equipment is not as good, it is still a modern army. Kang Teichu and Zhang Qianlei have made such a big scene. I'm afraid Sidonia is going to be in chaos. When the commotion in San Juan gradually subsided, Marligan asked around for some information. He rubbed his chin and a deep worry appeared on his face. Boss, what's there to be afraid of? Isn't it a good time for us to make a fortune? A few of his subordinates rubbed their hands together. Stupid. This is not the same as a regular war. Marligan took a big gulp of rum, but his eyes were not drunk at all. He was abnormally sober and even showed a little fear. I'm afraid this place will become the battlefield of the immortal state warriors. It's all because of the damn legend of Blood Orchid. The battlefield of the immortal state warriors. Several of his comrades were surprised, and their hearts trembled uncontrollably. If the immortal state warriors start a war, we will be affected. Let's go, let's leave Sidoni immediately. Marligan made a prompt decision. He filled the shabby helicopter with fuel, packed up his belongings, and was about to leave this troublesome place. Hey Black Bear Marligan, my old friend, where are you going? Suddenly a joking voice came. At the entrance of the manor, a fully armed and majestic Russian man with gray hair appeared. Isbear, why are you here? Marligan's eyes turned and he suddenly had a bad premonition. Chapter 588. Constantine the Glacier Bear used to be an elite of the KGB, and now he was the leader of the famous Russian Glacier Bear mercenary group. Mulligan knew that the government forces were supported by the European Union and the United Kingdom. Thorpe was supported by America and Prince Bobby's rebels were supported by Russia. But the Russian Glacier Bear had never appeared in Sidoni before. It seemed like the war had escalated. I heard that there were a few powerful people from Wuxia here. Do you know anything about them? Constantine the Glacier Bear pulled a chair and sat down. He took off the sharp machete on his leg and picked his nails leisurely. Put away your bitch's dagger. Mulligan jumped down from the helicopter and roared in a thunderous voice. I don't know anything. Don't even think about getting any information from me. This is Sidoni, not the Caucasus Mountains or the Siberian ice fields. I'm not afraid of you. Calm down, my old friend. I'm not asking you on behalf of the Glacier Bear mercenary group. Let me tell you, there are a lot of powerful people coming. Constantine smiled faintly and said jokingly. What kind of powerful people are you talking about? Do you think I, old man Mulligan, can be scared? Mulligan roared. Then under Mulligan's shocked gaze, a middle-aged woman with a black hood walked in step by step. She had a cold aura unique to the Siberian highlands. Wherever she went, ice crystals would form on the ground and snowflakes would fall from the sky. His hunting dog Jennifer was immediately frozen into an ice sculpture. The leader of the Frost Witch Society Plehanova. Mulligan's expression changed drastically. He couldn't help but take a step back. His legs were trembling slightly. Then before he could react, a large group of people walked in from behind. Mulligan knew some of these people and some of them he didn't. But Mulligan was sure that each of them was a powerful person from the Dark World. They could shake the entire Dark World with a stomp of their feet. The Caucasus Grand Shaman Lady Prophet. The leader of the Tombstone Assassin Organization, Grim Reaper. The founder of the Butterfly Skeleton, Lady Catherine. The powerful person on the dark ranking Siberian Hammer, Ivan. Hundreds of people swarmed into Marligan's manor. They were all famous existences in the Dark World. Some of their auras were as cold as the ice and snow of the Arctic, some were as heavy and condensed as the Caucasus Mountains, and some were as manic as erupting volcanoes. Almost all of them were powerful existences in Russia and Eastern Europe. Oh my God, these are the leaders of the underworld. There are 4 of them on the CIA's power rankings. Almost all the top experts in Russia and Eastern Europe have been dispatched. Mulligan's eyes were filled with fear and cold sweat broke out. He was also a top expert in the field of international mercenaries, but compared to these super experts he was like a little white rabbit in front of a lion. What made him even more uneasy was, after these experts arrived, they were not in a hurry to negotiate with him. Instead, they stood respectfully and quietly on both sides of the main road, as if they were waiting for some important figure to arrive. Who are you waiting for? It can't be that person, right? The more Mulligan thought about it, the more scared he became. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Sure enough, an old man with an abnormally large and tall body, wearing an old military uniform, walked in with a dignified aura. In his demonic red pupils, his gaze was unusually cold and ferocious. Like an eagle looking at a wolf, there seemed to be a torrential aura of blood rising and falling. So, one of the 3 giants on the CIA's power rankings, the Wolf King Alexander, who is now ranked 4th. When Maligan saw him, his legs went weak and he almost knelt on the ground. The Wolf King Alexander, the chief instructor of the Russian winter soldiers, the spiritual leader, was even more powerful than Xiao Bin. He was the peerless expert that the KGB and the Russian emperor had to rely on. But immediately after, another middle-aged bald man with an elegant temperament came in a wheelchair. One of the 5 giants of America's Blue Storm, Professor. Once ranked second on the power rankings, currently ranked 6th on the dark ranking, and he is the chief consultant of the CIA's power rankings. Maligan felt that his head was about to explode. One had to know that America and Russia were both major countries in the world, and there had been many conflicts in history. In the era of the former Soviet Union, there was even an arms race and a Cold War. Alexander and Professor were the top experts of their respective countries. They had always been on guard against each other, secretly competing against each other. Legend had it that they had even fought against each other. Why were they suddenly together? And behind the two of them, the elites of the Winter Soldiers and Blue Storm were almost all mobilized. Maligan, I told you that there would be experts coming. You're going to tell me now. Constantine looked mockingly at the uneasy Maligan and snorted coldly. Don't kill me, I really don't know anything. Maligan stood there like a clay sculpture and said with a stiff voice. He knew that great trouble had arrived. If he revealed information about Kong Teichu, he would be obliterated by Jiang Tian. If he didn't say anything, how could these terrifying experts let him go? Perhaps I should tear you to pieces. Behind the Wolf King Alexander, a powerhouse roared. He stretched out his hand, which instantly turned into a large furry claw. Everyone, don't make things difficult for this poor child. But immediately after, a faint yet mighty voice was heard. It reverberated like the voice of a god, as if it carried the consciousness of the heavens. Dazzling holy light filled the air. A mighty old man wearing medieval armor, holding a golden scepter, and a laurel crown studded with precious gems strolled in. He was like a high and mighty god overlooking his own people, majestically and benevolently sweeping his gaze over everyone. He smiled and said, I already know who the expert who invaded Sidonie is. My old friend, we haven't seen each other for 30 years. Professor's expression changed drastically. He nodded slightly in greeting to this old man. The other experts' expressions also changed drastically. They were solemn and nervous as they bowed deeply to this oddly dressed old man. Alexander's expression changed drastically, but he also lowered his head silently to express the highest respect. Who is it? Who has such great authority to suppress the world's 2 greatest experts? Maligan's heart was beating wildly. He couldn't figure it out for a moment. Suddenly, his pupils shrank as he thought of a name that made his heart tremble. Zeus. The former number 1 on the Dark World's strong ranking, the master of the Western Palace of Gods. Maligan was dumbfounded. His heart was beating wildly, almost bursting on the spot. Zeus, the number 1 main god of the Palace of Gods. The only saint-level expert in the West. He had power close to that of a god, and his strength was comparable to the legendary immortal Wuxia. Honorable Lord Zeus, did you come to Sidonie to help the government army unify Sidonie? The professor asked politely and cautiously with a smile on his face. Sidonie was the biggest warlord in the 3 roads. They each had their own supporters, and the government army's supporters were the European Union and the United Kingdom. Zeus hadn't made a move for decades. His appearance meant that the 12 main gods would definitely come out in full force. So why did Zeus and the others come? To fight for the sovereignty of Sidonie or Blood Orchid? The political power struggle of a small country like Sidonie is like ants fighting for a grain of rice. Is it worth the attention of experts like us? So what if our British Empire gave the control of Sidonie to Russia and the United States? But if we get the Blood Orchid and start the great journey of human evolution, maybe we can become real gods and look down on the world. Zeus laughed. He was heroic and mighty, and his domineering aura soared to the sky. He looked down on the world and swept through all directions. He was worthy of being the number 1 expert on the CIA's strong ranking for 20 years. Even if the younger generation surged and newcomers emerged one after another, no one could shake his position. So Lord Zeus came for the Blood Orchid. Unfortunately, so did we. Wolf King Alexander's eyes flickered with an ominous glint. He took a step forward and a surge of battle intent rose to the sky. Lord Wolf King, do you think only our three forces are fighting for the Blood Orchid? Even if the Palace of Gods withdraws now, do you think you have any hope of getting the Blood Orchid? Zeus shouted coldly. A bright lightning flashed in his eyes as if it was real. The monstrous aura suppressed Wolf King Alexander and forced him to take a step back. Wolf King, don't be impulsive. The professor calmly stopped the Wolf King and looked at Zeus with a warm smile. Mr. Zeus, who is the powerhouse that appeared 2 days ago? The British MI6 has received information that Kong Teichu and Zhang Qianlei have attacked the Changshu tribe and subdued the three strange gods. Zeus looked down at the professor and said coldly, if you want to get the Blood Orchid, I'm afraid you have to defeat Kong Teichu and his henchmen first. Kong Teichu. As soon as these 3 words came out, it was as if there was magic. The whole place was dead silent. Everyone's face was filled with deep fear, and they did not dare to make a sound. It's him. It's the Wuxia kid who killed Xiao Bin and Andre. I'm going to tear him into pieces. Wolf King gritted his teeth and said, the European Union has decided to give up fighting for Sidoni's regime and share such important information. They have already shown a lot of sincerity. Zeus said calmly. You have to know that although Sidoni is backward, it is rich in mineral resources. It's equivalent to the value of Vale. And the other party is Kong Teichu. If I don't tell you in advance and you rush over, you will only have a 50% chance of winning. There's a greater possibility that you will return empty-handed. I want to exchange this for a chance to cooperate with you. The 3 powerful organizations will work together to kill Kong Teichu and share the Blood Orchid. If you are interested, then come find me at the San Juan International Hotel. I can give you a month to consider it. After Zeus left, the whole place fell into a strange silence. Everyone was silent for a long time before some experts could not help but break the silence in a low voice. What should we do? Should we cooperate with the Pantheon? Kong Teichu is not easy to deal with. I think that if our 2 organizations work together, we should be able to kill Kong Teichu. Wolf King Alexander smiled proudly. If Kong Teichu really comes, then we'll have to reformulate our strategy. We can't act rashly. The professor's expression was extremely solemn. He drove the intelligent wheelchair out and sighed leisurely. I've been studying him since his debut. The more I study him, the more I realize how terrifying he is. I didn't expect to clash with him in the end. We need to mobilize more experts to strengthen our equipment and triple our combat power to have a chance of winning. Chapter 589. The Wolf King Alexander suppressed his anger, but he could only agree and follow them out. By the way, Molly Jen once provided transportation support to Kong Teichu to prevent the news from leaking. Kill him. The professor's cold voice sounded. The ice which Plehanova waved her hand. Numerous blue diamond-like icicles shot out like flowers scattered by a celestial maiden. Ah! Malajan's strong body, which was comparable to a physique grandmaster, was instantly penetrated. Blood gushed out of his wound and he fell to the ground. A few mercenaries were also penetrated by the icicles. They fell to the ground and died. With the protection of Qing Linzi, the old dragon, and Shirley, as well as Huang Linger's company, Jiang Tian was very relieved. Under the Blood Orchid waterfall, he sat in a temporary thatched cottage. Jiang Tian immediately took out supplementary medicine from his storage ring and started to refine pills with the mature Immortal Ascension Blood Arrow Orchid and Orchid Sundae. The Immortal Ascension Blood Arrow Orchid had the reputation of being a foundation establishment herb. It was created by nature and contained abundant spirit qi. It could be consumed directly. However, since Jiang Tian was an expert in alchemy, he naturally wouldn't waste any spirit qi. He wanted to further condense and purify the medicine through refinement. 6 hours later, he refined a pill that was as red as a ruby. The pill was the size of a pigeon's egg and emitted a bright light. It was surrounded by dense spirit qi and a colorful mist. Once the pill was out, strange phenomena appeared. Within a meter of the pill there were dragons, tigers, kirans, and phoenixes. Although it was only a small-scale phenomenon, it was still a phenomenon, and the pill was still a high-grade one. Returning Cauldron Heavenly Pill. The pill was like its name. Even if a cultivator had already stepped into the 9 heavens, they would still be able to improve further and touch the sky with their fingers. At the late stage of qi refinement, cultivation was more difficult than before. The difficulty of foundation establishment was even more difficult. However, this kind of medicinal pill was like a kind of extreme support. It allowed a cultivator to break through the clouds, carry the blue sky and skyrocket, infinitely close to foundation establishment. In the past, on the cultivation continent, there was once a powerful person who wrote a poem praising the power of this pill. The heart refines qi and defends nature. Tidy up the genie to return to the center. He transformed into the 5-colored heavenly cauldron pill and flew up into the sky. Flying up to the sky, free and unfettered. The 8 luan-as held the dragon-winged luan in their hands. Colorful rainbows interspersed with the luan, peeking into the 9 suns and the 6 underworlds. Turning back to laugh at the emperor for 10,000 years, by Liang's osmanthus guesthouse is empty. This pill was invented by that brat, Immortal Emperor Binghua. Its effect is indeed extraordinary. Jiang Tian looked at the Guizhong cauldron heavenly pill with admiration in his eyes. Jiang Tian used his divine sense to transmit his voice. Ling, I've already refined the medicinal pills. Next I'll go into seclusion. If I'm slow, I'll take 3 months, and if I'm quick, I'll be able to break out of seclusion in 1 month. Remember, no one is to disturb me. Understood. Huang Linger replied with her divine sense. The moment he swallowed the pill. Boom. Jiang Tian's meridians boiled. Countless spiritual energy poured into his sea of qi like rivers flowing into the sea, causing the volume of his sea of qi to expand by 10 times in an instant. The spiritual energy was dense and boiling, restless like a tsunami sweeping through, like a volcanic eruption. In his sea of qi, strange phenomena appeared and changed in an instant. His sea of qi even had a feeling that it could not bear it and was about to explode. The Guizhong cauldron heavenly pill is best taken by someone at the 8th level of qi refinement. I'm only at the 6th level of qi refinement. Fortunately, my gung metal divine body is strong, otherwise I might not be able to bear it. Jiang Tian had long been familiar with this feeling, so he was not surprised. He immediately immersed himself in cultivation. He concealed his spirit and qi, held his breath, and entered a meditative state. He operated the primal chaos art and began to transform the surging spiritual energy of the medicinal pills into gung metal true essence. However, when he began to refine the medicinal pills, all the pores on Jiang Tian's body opened up, making Jiang Tian feel as if he was flying and floating. It was very comfortable. Cultivation knew no time, but to Jiang Tian, who had a lifespan of 10,000 years, this feeling was still very enjoyable and satisfying for him. Time passed by minutes and seconds, but the outside world had already turned upside down. The invasion of the foreign race had destroyed the government forces in the capital, San Juan, giving the rebels and resistance forces a chance to take advantage of. The leader of the rebel forces, Wang Chubua, immediately led his troops north from the southwest with the support of the Russian Polar Bear mercenary group. They pushed all the way for 50 kilometers. Everywhere they passed, the flames of war continued and blood flowed like rivers. As for the leader of the resistance forces, Thorpe, with the support of the American arms dealers, killed his way north from the southeast. He was only 30 kilometers away from the capital. However, they did not disturb the Changshu tribe for the time being. This was because their masters, Blue Storm and Winter Soldier, were both accumulating strength. They wanted to finish the job in one fell swoop. However, they did not know that Jiang Tian was also rapidly breaking through. When he came out, his strength had increased tenfold or even hundredfold. After Master Kong attacked the Changshu tribe, he hurriedly went into seclusion. Could he be injured? Lin Fengmian came to the bottom of the snow orchid waterfall and could not help but feel a little worried. The situation of the war had worsened. The government forces, the rebels, and the resistance forces were fighting fiercely. Who knew when they would turn around and attack the camp at Cass Lake? This old dragon was trampled so badly by it. How could he be injured? The giant trees shook, the mountain rocks creaked, and the reeds parted like the tide. The flood serpent old dragon slithered over and spoke human language. It called itself the old dragon, but it was speaking standard Wuxia language. Oh my god. Lin Fengmian was so scared that his eyes almost popped out. He threw a punch and jumped back more than 10 meters. Little white worm, do you want to give me a massage? Come, this dragon will take you as my human pet. The Jiaoshi old dragon took the punch and chuckled as if nothing had happened. I am at the peak of the transcendent state. He is unharmed after a punch with all my strength. Oh my god, this flood serpent is too scary. Lin Fengmian was so scared that his legs turned to jelly. He staggered back and trembled all over. Huang Linger suddenly appeared and scolded gently, "Old dragon, don't joke with him. This is Master Kang's friend." Why? The old dragon protested with tears running down his face. "He's just a weak white worm. Why can he be Master Kang's friend? And I am just a cute pet." Huh. What is this? Seeing the old dragon retreat into the deep pool, Lin Fengmian felt a bit relieved. Suddenly he looked up and was shocked. With Jiang Tian's thatched cottage as the center, a huge cyclone with a radius of 100 meters appeared out of nowhere. The spirit qi of heaven and earth was almost visible to the naked eye, and it turned into raindrops from time to time. The spirit qi within dozens of miles has been gathered by Kong Teichu. Suddenly Zhang Qianlei flew over. His eyes were filled with amazement as he said in a deep voice, "After breaking through this time, he really left me far behind. Oh my god. Is he a mortal deity?" Lin Fengmian's eyes were full of admiration and shock. He's not a mortal deity, but he's even stronger than one. Zhang Qianlei knew that Jiang Tian had a completely different cultivation system. But he was sure of one thing. Jiang Tian had refined a mature immortal ascension blood arrow orchid. In addition to the heaven and earth spiritual energy within a radius of tens of miles, this kind of progress was unimaginable. He said enviously, "I'm afraid that when he breaks through, he will definitely be able to fight with Saint Zeus or even Yi Tianren. It's possible for him to be the best in the world." He can fight with Zeus and Yi Tianren? The best in the world. Lin Fengmian was shocked as if he had seen a ghost. He not bad, right? We can witness the birth of a mortal deity. Our journey in the world is not in vain. Looking at the cottage with surging spirit qi, Zhang Qianlei's face was full of anticipation. Although he couldn't go there, he wanted to. But this time Jiang Tian was in seclusion. Seemed to be longer than expected. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. A week passed. During this period, Zhang Qianlei and Lin Fengmian brought little Arthur to observe every day, but Jiang Tian still showed no signs of coming out. Will something happen to Master Kong? Why hasn't there been any news after so long? Lin Fengmian was anxious. In the past few days, the rebel army and the Free Resistance Army had defeated the government army. The rebel army and the Free Resistance Army had reached some kind of compromise. Prince Wang Chibobi successfully ascended the throne and appointed Thorpe as the prime minister and formed a cabinet. Although Cass Lake was still very calm, it was too calm. It was so calm that it was a little strange. It made Lin Fengmian feel that the other party seemed to be brewing some kind of conspiracy. Zhang Qianlei said calmly, "Ha, little Lin, you're too naive. I cultivated in seclusion for decades and only took a step forward to reach the half-step mortal deity level. If Jiang Tian can break through to the mortal deity level in a month, he can be called a genius. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month. 1 month later, just when Zhang Qianlei and the others thought that the day would end as usual. Suddenly, rumble, 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 as if tens of thousands of millstones were rolling together, rumbling came from the sky. Everyone's heart trembled as they looked up. The cyclone above the thatched cottage suddenly spun, expanded and expanded. It pushed in all directions 200 meters, 300 meters, 1 kilometer, 5 kilometers like a hurricane. Boom. Amidst the earth-shattering explosion, a dazzling golden light shot out from the roof of the thatched cottage and into the clouds, piercing through the entire cyclone. This golden light was as thick as a water tank and as heavy as a substance. It pierced through the clouds and reached a height of 1,000 meters. It was as if the great sage heaven's equal had swung the golden cudgel and instantly pierced through the sky. The golden light formed a mushroom top 1,000 meters in the sky. It was dazzling, blazing, and holy. It spread in all directions and dyed the entire cyclone a layer of magnificent golden yellow. From afar, it was majestic and shining like an emperor's crown. Condensing chi into clouds 1,000 meters in the sky, a canopy like clouds. Seeing this, Zhang Qianlei's eyes burst out with a fascinated light. He was very excited. This is the symbol of a mortal deity. But isn't it recorded in the ancient books that it's 100 meters in the sky? But why is Master Kang so long? I'm afraid it's 10 times more powerful than an ordinary mortal deity. Could it be that he has reached a higher level, a terrestrial golden deity? Lin Fengnian was dumbfounded and tongue-tied. Celestial Master Zhang, what are those? Huang Linger looked carefully and was shocked again. On the golden pillar, there were countless golden Daoist patterns and runes floating up and down, shining brightly. Chapter 590. Some of these runes and dharma laws flew like phoenixes. Some were as heavy as tortoises, some were as majestic as tortoises, and some were as mighty as azure dragons. Like a dragon, like a phoenix, like a crow, like a qilin with iron hooks and silver strokes, it was dense and substantial. It was filled with an ancient, profound, and obscure aura, as if it had passed through thousands of years. It was overflowing with an ancient aura and carried the boundless aura of time. Dao. Dharma laws. Jiang Tian only used a month to weave his own dharma laws. He has become a real mortal deity. Zhang Qianlei was full of amazement. Even though he had been conceited all his life and was extremely talented. However, he had no choice but to admit that when compared to the might of the phenomenon caused by Jiang Tian's breakthrough, he was far too inferior. The dharma laws, dharma patterns, golden chi pillars and cyclones waited for a quarter of an hour before gradually dissipating. More than half of the spirit chi in the entire Blood Orchid waterfall and the surrounding 10 kilometers had been extracted. Within a month, it could condense into rain and flow like a waterfall. But now only clouds and trickles were left. Even the remaining few blood orchids were a little dispirited and looked listless. Boom. There was a sound. The thatched hut exploded. The first thing everyone saw was a pair of deep eyes, like a deep black hole that could connect to the outer space. Lin Fengnian looked at it and felt as if he had fallen into it forever, so he quickly turned his head away. Jiang Tian, who was dressed in white, flew out and sighed leisurely. I've been cultivating for 3 years. Today I finally reached the 7th level of chi refinement and entered the late stage. This sigh was full of hardships and perseverance. Jiang Tian returned to Earth in March 2007, and now it was March 2010. It had already been 3 years. In the past 3 years he had been fighting everywhere. It wasn't easy to enter the late stage of chi refinement in the Age of Doom where spirit chi was thin and resources were scarce. It was much faster than when he was in the outer space. This was because he was a celestial lord and had accumulated a lot of experience and divine powers in the past 10,000 years. If other cultivators were thrown on this dead planet with no spirit chi, they might not be able to reach the late stage of chi refinement in their lifetime. What a powerful immortal spirit chi. He is indeed comparable to a human immortal saint. Zhang Qianlei moved closer to Jiang Tian and sniffed hard. He had always been very arrogant and always put on a high and mighty attitude. But at this moment he wanted nothing more than to pounce on Jiang Tian and suck him a few times. He couldn't control himself at all. It was no wonder that Zhang Qianlei was unable to control himself. There were a total of 9 levels of chi refinement. Stepping into the 7th level was the true late stage. This was also the most dangerous stage before the foundation establishment stage. Once one stepped into this stage, they wouldn't be far from the true foundation establishment stage. Only by stepping into the foundation establishment stage could one lay a good foundation. Only then could one truly begin the path of immortal cultivation and become a true immortal cultivator. As for those who had yet to reach the foundation establishment stage, they were still mortals, ants and dust. They were not even cultivators. And when one reached this level of cultivation, the immortal chi was already dense, and there was an irresistible attraction. Human immortal. Saint, when we come out I'll kill them for you to see. Jiang Tian smiled faintly, brimming with confidence. Zhang Qianlei could see that his energy and cultivation had increased, but he didn't see the phenomenal success of his gung metal divine body. Now he could form the gung metal armor, which increased his defense power by 10 times, and his control of metal elements was also more powerful. He wouldn't be able to forcefully change the trajectory of a few cannonballs like in Japan, which would cause damage to his energy reserve. Everything was as easy as moving his arms. Jiang Tian, you're finally out. Huang Linger's face was full of joy. When the news spread to the K tribe and the Cass Lake camp, everyone cheered. Needless to say, at the Cass Lake camp, the Chinese who were rescued to the camp heard that a martial arts master had come to Wuxia to lead them to kill the rebel government forces and save them. They were all grateful and looked forward to seeing him. In fact, the people of the K tribe had been hiding in a few shady caves, and most of them had escaped the massacre of the warlords. But now, the Xianxia tribe came to apologize and said that they had received an oracle from Wuxia's Master Kong and would never bother them again. The people of the K tribe found it unbelievable, because they had seen with their own eyes how powerful Shirley, the old dragon, and Qing Linzi were. But now, the three gods had become Zhang Tian's slaves, which showed that Zhang Tian was the real god. God is out. Now, after hearing the news that Zhang Tian had come out, the backbone of the tribes immediately came to worship Zhang Tian with tropical fruits. The chief of the K tribe was a skinny old man, but he was hale and hearty and his eyes were shining. He wore a striped bedsheet and a pair of glasses which made him look like Mahatma Gandhi. With the support of little Arthur, the old man came before Zhang Tian and kowtowed deeply. He put his palms together and looked at Zhang Tian with reverence in his eyes. He then mumbled a lot of words in the native language. Little Arthur translated, "The chief is thanking you for protecting the K tribe. From now on, the whole tribe will worship and pray to you as a god. And we invite you to join us for dinner." Okay. Zhang Tian didn't want to pay attention to them, but seeing Huang Linger's eagerness he gladly agreed. Zhu Jiangchao said, "Why don't we call the Wuxia people of the Golden Nung group? They also miss you." Zhang Tian also didn't mind and nodded his head. The old chief of the K tribe was immediately excited. He stood on the rock and said a lot of words. The people of the K tribe were immediately excited. They hurriedly ran to the K tribe to prepare food and wine. And Zhang Tian, Huang Linger and the others, accompanied by the chief of the K tribe, slowly walked to the K tribe. Along the way the atmosphere was very harmonious. Little Arthur followed closely behind Zhang Tian and dutifully translated. On the way, a group of monkeys climbed out of the forest. When they saw Zhang Tian and the others, they immediately roared angrily and bared their teeth. "These monkeys don't seem to be friendly to us," Huang Linger said thoughtfully. Yuan Kersen covered her mouth and laughed. "Miss Huang, you will know the reason later." Listening to the introduction of the K tribe's chief, they walked for an hour and arrived at the K tribe. The K tribe occupied a large area by the Cass Lake, 8 to 9 kilometers in radius, with 4 to 5 villages scattered around. Zhang Tian came to the largest village, but the buildings here were much more primitive than the Xianxia tribe. The round houses were built with pebbles and red soil, covered with banana leaves and grass, and the better ones had iron roofs. The red road was very muddy. There were some chickens foraging for food and hunting dogs running around. Although the living environment was bad, the scenery was beautiful. The night sky of Africa was almost transparent. It was like a sapphire sprinkled with gold and silver powder, and the stars in the sky seemed to be within reach. The Cass Lake in the distance reflected the moonlight and the stars in the sky. In the dense forest, the chirping of insects and birds could be heard. The night in Africa was very beautiful. The roads are crisscrossing and the chickens and dogs are chatting. This is really a paradise on earth. Lin Fengmian looked around and sighed leisurely. "Paradise, my ass, this is hell on earth." Zhang Qianlei glared and said angrily. Since he came to Sidoni he had seen too many ugly things. The government controlled the warlords and the warlords slaughtered civilians, carried out genocide policies, burned and robbed everywhere, and there were diseases and plagues everywhere. This made him hate the imperialists, the government and the warlords. Celestial Master Zhang is right. It's better to be a dog in peace than a man in chaos. Lin Fengmian quickly smiled. When they came to the square in the middle of the village, they saw a group of K tribe people dancing around a bonfire. There were also people beating African drums. "Is there a festival today?" Huang Linger asked. The people of Africa are naturally optimistic. As long as there is a bonfire they can sing and dance. They dance almost every day. Yuan Kersen explained, "But Master Kong is here today so there are more of them." Zhang Tian walked to the square and little Arthur followed closely behind. He was like a competent follower of Zhang Tian. The chief shouted loudly. Suddenly, everyone stopped dancing and ran to Zhang Tian. They all kowtowed and prayed in their native language. Their eyes were full of fear, respect, and gratitude. There was even a sense of holiness. "I'm still far from being a real god." Zhang Tian was helpless, but he could only let it be. After the chief spoke, the black people became lively again. They ran into the mud houses and took out simple black pottery jars. The old African women took out all kinds of food, and the children and hounds ran around excitedly. Several respected priests and the like, holding crutches, warmly invited Jiang Tian to take a seat. Jiang Tian found that these black people were actually more civilized than he had imagined. Except for some old people who were still wrapped in sheets and wrapped in banana leaves, most of the young people were wearing clothes made in Wuxia. There were all kinds of clothes, most of them were colorful fiber products. Several trendy black youths were wearing shirts with the words, Meteor Garden, printed on them. For beautiful Asian boys were posing on them. It turned out that those outdated clothes were dumped here. When the backbone of the medical team and the Chinese refugees arrived, a warm and grand banquet began. The black people and Zhu Jiangchao of the medical team knew each other. When they saw them coming, they immediately pulled them around the bonfire and danced a passionate African dance called the head dance. The strong African man quickly beat the African war drum and wildly brandished his spear. His whole body shook rhythmically as he made all kinds of assassination postures. His mouth let out a roar. Huang Linger noticed that the leader of the soldiers seemed to be holding a real head. Several black African women walked to Jiang Tian, knelt down and respectfully presented a clay jar. Chapter 591. The clay jug was very unique. It was flat, round and had 2 ears. It could be tied with a string and used as a water jug. The chief and the priest raised their glasses and bowed deeply to Jiang Tian with tears in their eyes. They raised the jug and said something excitedly. Little Arthur explained with red eyes. Over the years the K tribe was captured by the Changsho tribe, and 500 people were killed by the warlords. Now the population is only half of the original. They are thanking you for protecting the bloodline of our people. Let me invite you to drink. I didn't do anything. It was hard for Jiang Tian to refuse such kindness. He raised the wine pot and touched his lips lightly. Then he picked up the python meat and took 2 bites. It tasted similar to fish, but it was very chewy. Zhang Qianlei was proud, as if he had found the glory of the Daoist master of the Republic of China. He laughed and said, "Don't laugh." He picked up the jug and gulped it down. After drinking, he shook his head and commented, "Well, sour and sweet, very sweet, but the alcohol content is a bit low, similar to rice wine. It should be a kind of fruit wine." Yuan Kersen, who was watching the dance, suddenly turned her head and asked, "Old Immortal Zhang, did you drink it?" This title made Zhang Qianlei very happy. He nodded and said with a generous smile, "When in Rome, do as the Romans do. I'm not a person who lives in the clouds, so I have to be down to earth. Don't say the taste is pretty good." Seeing Yuan Kersen's dumbfounded look, Zhang Qianlei asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing, as long as old Immortal Zhang likes it." Yuan Kersen hesitated. "What the hell is going on? Hurry up and say it." Zhang Qianlei asked anxiously. "Nothing, it's just that their brewing process is different from our country's wine." "How is it different?" "They first pick wild grapes, then chew them and spit them into the jug where they naturally ferment. I used to drink a lot, but after seeing their brewing process I stopped drinking." "Ouch, Mr. Zhang, where are you going? Don't vomit, don't laugh." Zhang Qianlei vomited so much that his bile almost came out. He didn't dare to drink this African wine anymore. Fortunately, there was still a lot of beer and red wine in the Kos Lake Refuge camp. They also brought a few boxes over for everyone to enjoy. The African people seemed to like the foreign wine more. After drinking it, they became even more excited. Dishes were served one after another. Then some African dishes were served. The so-called African dishes were all roasted monkeys, roasted pythons, roasted lizards, fried grasshoppers, caterpillars, and so on. Every dish was challenging everyone's tolerance. This was especially true for the famous roasted monkey. In everyone's eyes, it was no different from eating a human. The monkey's head was chopped off from its neck, and its face was still filled with fear and pain before its death. It was thrown into the fire and roasted until it was charred on the outside and tender on the inside. The black people held the ferocious monkey head and tore it apart. Their saliva splattered everywhere, and they even reached into the head to dig out the tofu pudding to eat. Black men are still the best. Zhang Qianlei sighed and shook his head. The little monkey, heaven's equal, was crying bitterly at the side, mourning for its own kind. Luckily, the kayaks knew that he was Jiang Tian's pet, so they didn't try to chop him up. No wonder those monkeys hate the tribesmen so much. They bare their fangs when they see people. Huang Linger was so frightened that she almost vomited. Fortunately, there were some regular foods that the women could eat, such as bananas, roasted potatoes, roasted corn, grilled fish, and river shrimp. Cass Lake was rich in aquatic products. The black people were good at swimming and fishing, so there was no shortage of meat. If there was no war and no warlords, this place would really be a paradise on earth. But what surprised Jiang Tian was that little Arthur didn't eat the roasted monkey. But after thinking about it, he understood. He used to work in the capital, San Juan. After all, he came into contact with some civilized society. They chatted on the way. Little Arthur had a rich experience. He used to be a serf in a white plantation, and he also worked as a doorman at the San Juan International Hotel. He was fluent in English, Portuguese, and a little Chinese. Of course, he only knew some simple words. He couldn't understand too much. The black people were forthright and generous. This feast almost finished all the food they had in the past few days. The black men who drank until their stomachs were round were swaying. They hugged the black girls who had been flirting with each other and went to the wilderness to applaud for love. Master Kong, these Africans are actually very friendly and cute. After interacting with them for a long time, people become simple. Zhu Jiangchao sat down behind Jiang Tian and raised his glass with a smile. Jiang Tian clinked glasses with him, took a sip of beer and smiled, but they also have shortcomings, right? Of course. Zhu Jiangchao smiled. They are very lazy. Probably this is the common characteristic of tropical people. They are rich in resources. They don't need to develop technology, they don't need to work hard, and they can eat until their stomachs are round. Lu Quan nodded. Yes, this is the bad habit of the black people. Our Golden Ning group employed them before. When they got the salary, they immediately disappeared. When they finished spending the money, they came back to make money. Most of them just don't work. Other than hunting, drinking, and sleeping, they never take care of their children and wives. In fact, more than half of the work in the tribe is basically maintained by women. Jiang Tian shook his head and said, I don't agree with the bad habit of the ethnic group. It's also because of poor education. There are many outstanding black people such as Martin Luther King and so on. You see, little Arthur is very hardworking. It's because he has seen the world outside. Yes. Grandmaster Zhang's words make sense. Jiang Tian casually said, but Lu Quan's face was filled with nervousness as he nodded repeatedly. Jiang Tian suddenly lost interest. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. How can you talk when you are so nervous? However, Jiang Tian also understood. The journey of cultivation was such a lonely journey. The higher you go, the colder it is and the fewer friends and companions you have. In the 3 years since he returned, only Zhang Qianlei and Yi Zhantian could make friends on equal terms. At this time, little Arthur ran over and snuggled up to Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian patted his head. Little Arthur said seriously, Sir, I want to give you something. What is it? Little Arthur took a simple ivory pendant from his neck and hung it on Jiang Tian's neck. Yuan Kursen smiled and said, Mr. Jiang, this is the amulet of the K tribe. They have been carrying it since they were born and they regard it as their own life. If he gives it to you, it is equivalent to giving you the blessing of Mother Earth. You must take it seriously. Looking at little Arthur's clear eyes, Jiang Tian felt warm in his heart. He solemnly shook hands with him and said, Thank you. Little Arthur ran to play with his friends again. Yuan Kursen said, He is very pitiful. His parents have died in the battle to protect the tribe. Now he is a child without parents. He needs a father. Jiang Tian knew that Yuan Kursen wanted Jiang Tian to take the child away and adopt him. But he didn't answer. There were so many orphan children here. How could he save them? At this time, Zhu Jiangchao's walkie-talkie suddenly rang. He suddenly became nervous and said, Master Kong, the army is coming. The new government army has surrounded the Cass Lake camp, the Changshu tribe and the K tribe. There are tens of thousands of soldiers. Jiang Tian frowned and looked at Zhang Qianlei. Brother Zhang, didn't you warn them? This is the new government army. Master Zhang defeated the old government army. They probably don't know how strong you are. Zhu Jiangchao briefly explained the war between the warlords and the change of regime. Fuck them. I'll kill them. Zhang Qianlei jumped up and was about to attack the enemy. Don't panic. Jiang Tian waved his hand and stood up. They haven't fired a shot yet. It is very likely that they are negotiating. Let's wait and see. Master Kong is really smart. At this time, a high-pitched voice like a wolf's howl was heard. Under the bewildered gazes of the crowd, an old man wearing an old Soviet military uniform, with an unusually tall stature of at least 2.34 meters, walked over with a majestic gait. The chief instructor of the Russian winter soldiers, Wolf King Alexander. Seeing this, Lin Fengmian was shocked as if he had seen a ghost. As the most powerful overlord in Russia, his photo and appearance had almost been spread throughout the world of overlords. Seeing his arrival, Lin Fengmian suddenly felt uneasy. Wolf King Alexander and Xiaobin were best friends. It was Xiaobin who healed the relationship between the Russian military and the moon-worshipping werewolves and led some werewolves to join the winter soldiers. Now he had left the North Pole camp and appeared in Sidonie. Was it for revenge? Behind him were many overlords from the Winter Soldier organization. They were all armed to the teeth. "You are Alexander. It seems that what will come will come. I knew that there would be a battle between us." Jiang Tian looked at Wolf King with interest. From the outside, his face was red and he looked mighty, no different from an ordinary person, but his body hair was abnormally thick and he was also very tall and majestic. But the essence blood in his body was boiling and burning, containing a violent power like a volcanic eruption. In terms of strength and physical strength, he was far stronger than any overlord he had met before. Even Genichi Miyamoto, who had broken through in the battle, or Bai Tianlei and his wife, were inferior in this aspect. "Master Kong, this old man has long heard of your name. I heard that you have defeated the government army in Sidonie and helped His Highness Bobby a lot. Now, an independent new government has been established. The war is also over. This old man would like to express his gratitude to you on his behalf." Alexander was like an old gentleman, bowing politely and speaking Chinese very skillfully. "Thank you." Jiang Tian's face was full of mockery. He snorted coldly and questioned, "Sending thousands of soldiers to surround the K tribe, the Changshu tribe and the Chinese refuge camp. Is this your way of thanking me? If you want to fight, then let's fight. No need to talk nonsense." As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere became solemn as if the temperature had suddenly dropped. The people of the tribe sensed the dangerous aura and retreated far away, leaving a battlefield. All the members of the winter soldiers were on guard and ready to fight. A battle was about to break out. Chapter 592. I don't mean any disrespect to you. In fact, I've been paying attention to Master Kong for a long time. Alexander's eyes flickered with the vicissitudes of time. He sighed and said, "Since Master Kong debuted, he has been almost invincible. He has swept across Asia and has never been defeated. He is indeed the most powerful man in Wuxia. He is comparable to my old friend Yi Tianren." "You've seen Yi Tianren?" Lin Fengmian exclaimed. Yi Tianren was more than 100 years old, a few years older than Zhang Qianlei. Alexander, on the other hand, was healthy and ruddy. He looked to be in his 50s. "Of course, I participated in both World War I and World War II. After World War II, the era of peace came. I traveled the world and met Yi Tianren once. We exchanged martial arts." Alexander sighed and said, "At first, I thought you were Yi Tianren's successor. However, after seeing you today, I realized that your auras are completely different. I have never smelled your aura on a human before. It's like a black hole in the depths of the universe. It's deep, mysterious, profound, and obscure. It's even older and more powerful than Mr. Yez. It seems that there are people like you in the ancient Eastern legends, but that's just a myth. I can't believe that an expert like you will appear in the world again." Lin Fengmian was shocked again. This old guy had lived for so long. He was really an old monster. "All right, Alexander, since you recognize me, you should withdraw your army." Jiang Tian was calm and relaxed as he lazily said, "I don't want to add any more killing. I know that in fact what bullshit Prince Wang Chu and what new government army are just puppets you support. Master Kong, please pay attention. This is the territory of Sidonie, which is protected by Russia." Alexander said with a cold gaze, "I know that you have already picked a blood orchid. Out of respect for you, I will allow you to leave this blood orchid safely, but from now on you can't step into Sidonie. You have no right to touch it." "Alexander, did you drink too much vodka to say such silly things?" Jiang Tian flicked his sleeves disdainfully. "Do you think it's still the 19th century? Controlling the political power of other countries at the drop of a hat. Using strong ships and cannons to open the gates of other countries and colonize other countries? Jiang Tian's words were loud and clear, making the blood of the people around him boil. The land under your feet belongs only to the people of Sidonia, not to the puppet government, not to the European Union, not to the United States, and not to Russia. The long 10 million years don't belong to you, and the next 10,000 years don't belong to you either. Your era has come to an end. Is Master Kong not planning to leave? So what if I don't leave? Then I'm afraid a brutal battle is unavoidable. Alessandra's face suddenly turned cold, and a fierce killing intent surged out from him. Do you think a beast like you who has just learned to walk upright is my opponent? I can kill you with one slap. Jiang Tian showed a trace of mockery and said leisurely. If there were strong people from the dark world here, they would definitely think that Jiang Tian was talking nonsense. Wolf King Alexander's status in Russia was like Yi Tianren's in Wuxia. He was on equal footing with the commander of the Russian Northern Army and could drink and chat happily with the Russian emperor. Except for some old monsters who lived in seclusion, he was the strongest person in Russia and no one could surpass him. From the current battle results, Jiang Tian's cultivation should be about the same as his. But Jiang Tian said that he could kill him with one slap. This was too arrogant. Hearing this, Lin Fengyan was speechless. Master Kong was too domineering, directly calling Alexander a beast. This was a slap in the face. Master Kong, I know you are very strong, but you are not too arrogant, are you? Alexander was furious. There was a sharp, murderous intent in his demonic red pupils, like the tip of a needle, and he shouted angrily. Even if Yi Tianren was here, he would not dare to say such arrogant words. He immediately wanted to attack Jiang Tian. Mr. Alexander, this matter can still be discussed. A bald middle-aged man came in a wheelchair. This person was dressed in a suit and had an elegant temperament, like a famous business professor. Only a pair of blue eyes shone brightly, as bright and deep as the stars. Blue Storm? The strong person who was once ranked second on the power rankings. Professor. Seeing this, Lin Fengyan was shocked again and cold sweat broke out. Behind the professor, the American Blue Storm experts were gathered. Green Demon, Golden Armor General, Sea Lady, and more than 20 X and S-class mutants. Every one of them was a super warlord, comparable to the combat strength of a regiment. Their aura was powerful and their killing intent soared. Alexander and the professor's strength was comparable to or even stronger than Miyamoto Genichi, and was on par with Zhang Qianlei. What was more terrifying was that the forces under their banner were all out. With such a luxurious lineup, even a human immortal sage would have to avoid and treat it with caution. At this time, the professor no longer had his usual elegance and elegance. He laughed sinisterly. Master Kong, don't you see that the two tribes, especially the Chinese refugee camp at Cass Lake, have been surrounded by the new government forces? If you don't leave and give up on the Blood Orchid, perhaps we can only kill those Chinese. What? Blue Storm wants to join forces with the Winter Soldiers? Hearing this, Lin Fengyan could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Jiang Tian should be able to win against Wolf King Alexander alone. Coupled with the many powerful generals of the Winter Soldiers, it was a little difficult. But now with the addition of Blue Storm, there was almost no chance of winning. One had to know that the Winter Soldiers was in Russia and Blue Storm was in America. It was like the Long Formation was in Wuxia and the Cherry Blossom Festival was in Japan. Yes, this kind of competition between super warrior organizations was no longer a competition of the strength of the members, but a competition of the overall national strength. It was supported by the strength of the entire country, with countless scientific research and military forces pouring in. Compared to the Cherry Blossom Festival, Russia and America had more support and investment in their powerful organizations. They were equipped with the most advanced weapons, and the strength of these two organizations far exceeded that of the Cherry Blossom Festival. Haha, is this the style of America which always talks about human rights and democracy? Jiang Tian looked at the professor mockingly and said coldly, "You slaughtered unarmed and innocent civilians. Do you have any shame?" Master Kong, this is also a difficult decision for us. We have no choice. A trace of helplessness appeared on the professor's face as he shook his head and sighed. There was a simultaneous interpretation system on his wheelchair, and an electronic voice in Chinese immediately came out. It was very dry and cold. This world needs balance. It's like there are several countries in the world with nuclear weapons. Only by deterring each other can a balance be maintained and a rare peace be maintained. And the current situation is that you are the most powerful person in the world. You are an invincible and unstoppable person. It's like you are the only one in the world who has nuclear weapons. This has broken the delicate balance. If you are allowed to grow stronger and develop, you will eventually enslave the whole world. Zhang Tian shook his head and chuckled. He said disdainfully, "In my opinion, you are just a group of weak insects. What's the point of enslaving you? I have never thought of enslaving you. Master Kong, we don't have to be enemies with you," the professor said earnestly. "We just want to get the blood orchid and cultivate a powerful person like you. Only then can we reach a new balance and rest assured." "What blood orchid? How do you know its effect?" Zhang Tian shook his head disdainfully and said, "Even if I give you 10,000 blood orchids in 500 years, you won't be able to cultivate a powerful person like me." Zhang Tian was not exaggerating. In his previous life, after he reached the soul formation stage, he had crossed the void and returned to Earth. But even after hundreds of years, the science and technology on Earth had flourished, but the mysteries of the human body had still not been solved. The potential of the human body had not been stimulated, and it could not even eliminate diseases and increase longevity. "Hey, Kong Teichu, you won't let me." Wolf King Alexander was furious. He waved his hand and ordered, "New government army, flatten the Cass Lake camp." Huang Linger was shocked. Her beautiful face turned pale as she scolded, "Your Excellency Wolf King, you are one of the strongest people in the world, but you ordered the massacre of unarmed and innocent civilians. Are you human? Shame on you. Next will be the Longevity tribe and the K tribe." Alexander snorted. The professor seemed to be a bit reluctant, but thinking of the Pentagon's order, he could only shake his head and sigh. The people behind Zhang Tian were shocked and angry. Alexander's move was vicious. No matter how powerful Zhang Tian was, it was impossible for him to kill thousands of soldiers in a second. Even Zhang Tian took more than 10 minutes to destroy the old government army in Cass Lake. Even Zhang Qianlei took a lot of time to cross the old government army's defense line outside San Juan City. And it would only take a few minutes for the new government army equipped with artillery and bombers to raze the entire Cass Lake camp to the ground. The hundreds of innocent Chinese stationed there waiting for Wuxia's warships to rescue them would also die an unnatural death. This was forcing Zhang Tian to his death. Only by giving up all the blood orchids could he save the lives of the Chinese. "Are you forcing me to use my ultimate move? Fine, I'll show you what I, Kong Teichu, can do." Zhang Tian snorted as a strange golden light flashed across his forehead. In an instant, all the members of the Winter Soldiers and Blue Storm tensed up, thinking that Zhang Tian was going to make a move. But to their surprise, Zhang Tian stood there motionlessly with a faint smile on his face. What the hell is this kid doing? Everyone was puzzled. But at this moment, boom, 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 in the area of the Cass Lake Chinese refuge camp, flames soared into the sky and the earth shook. The sound of artillery bombardment and dense gunfire could be heard. Has the fire started? Alexander's eyes flashed with a cold light as he sneered. "Master Kong, although you have the ultimate skill and are undefeated in 10,000 battles, you can't stop more than 200 of your compatriots from being killed. How do you feel now?" "Alexander, you're wrong. No one in this world can threaten me." Zhang Tian was calm and composed as he looked at the Wolf King with ridicule. Hearing Zhang Tian's words, Alexander's heart was filled with uneasiness and confusion, as if he was facing a great enemy. It seemed that something was wrong. Chapter 593. However, the Wolf King changed his mind. Tens of thousands of new government elites had surrounded the Cass Lake Chinese refugee camp. Bombers, tanks, and cannons were all deployed. Under such circumstances, how could Zhang Tian turn the tables? He should be deliberately mystifying things. Alessandra thought with disdain. "What did you say?" On the side, the information officer pressed on the earpiece. Suddenly, his face changed drastically as he exclaimed. "Prince Thorpe and Prince Bobby ordered their troops to fire at the Bear mercenaries. The Bear Constantine was killed and there were many casualties. The entire army was almost wiped out." "What did you say?" "Thorpe and Bobby actually dared to attack the Bear mercenaries. Do they want me to tear them apart and eat them?" Alexander did not dare to believe it at first, but then he angrily shouted. The Bear Mercenaries was an international mercenary organization with retired Russian soldiers as the main members. There were also some Eastern Europeans and Central Asians. Many of them were ace soldiers from the KGB and the National Security Agency. They had all been through war and their professionalism was high. Their organization was tight and their actions were swift. In the international mercenary world they were very famous, second only to the famous Blackwater Security Company in South Africa. Although they were an independent mercenary organization, they had always been under the guidance of the KGB. They were secretly controlled by the KGB to do things that the military could not do. It must be known that in modern warfare the armies of various countries could not casually kill civilians. Otherwise they would be strongly condemned by the international community. Furthermore, the military could not casually enter other countries as it went against international law. However, military and security companies, which were commonly known as mercenaries, were not restricted by these two. They could shoot civilians, torture prisoners of war, and even commit genocide and massacres. They could do things that the hypocritical politicians wanted to do but were not convenient to do. It could be said that many of the large mercenary organizations in the world were secretly supported by the large countries of the world. For example, the Blackwater Security Company was formed by former members of the U.S. Navy SEALs and became a strong helper of the U.S. military in Afghanistan and Iraq. They received billions of dollars of contracts from the Pentagon every year. The Bear Mercenaries also had many connections with the Russian government and the military. In the eyes of the Wolf King Alexander, Bobby and Thorpe were just puppets that he could casually manipulate. They were not worth mentioning, but the Glacier Bear and Constantine were his right-hand men. The reason why the rebel army led by Crown Prince Bobby could defeat the old government army so quickly was because of the support of the thousands of Icefield Bears that could fight against 100 Icefield Bears. Otherwise, with Crown Prince Bobby's 1,000 men and a few Maxim machine guns left behind from World War II, they might not even be able to advance 10 kilometers before they were quickly devoured by President Kuba's remaining troops. He used a secret method of mind control to make Thorpe and Bobby kill each other. The professor was indeed an X-level psychic. He immediately understood the key points. At the same time, his face hardened as he pressed his hands against his forehead. His eyes suddenly emitted a blazing white light as two streams of spiritual energy blasted towards Zhou Xian. The professor's specialty was mind control, and he was the only psychic in the Western world who possessed X-level psychic power. He could read the thoughts and memories of others without physical contact. Through a special brainwave strengthening machine, he could even mentally link all the humans in the United States, regardless of whether they were ordinary humans or psychics. At the same time, his powerful psychic power could also kill everyone through this device. He also had two abilities. One was the thought cage, which could suppress or directly delete a person's personality and memory. The other was the thought stamp. In the 10 years of the Blue Storm's wild growth period, the professor once instilled the concept of food is poisonous into a prisoner in order to experiment. This person insisted on not eating any food for 3 months, even if the food was right in front of him and within his reach. In the end, he starved himself to death. Over the years, the professor had been studying Zhou Xian's information and pondering over every detail of his battle. He knew that Zhou Xian's psychic power was very strong, so he specifically asked Bell Labs to create a miniature version of the brainwave strengthening machine. Just this alone cost Bell Labs $30 million in research funds. The experiment proved that although the effect was not as good as a large-scale brainwave strengthening machine, it was still very good. It could increase his psychic power from 10 kilometers to over 100 kilometers, and his attack power had also increased a lot. My brainwaves, coupled with the newly developed miniature brainwave strengthening machine, might not be able to kill Kong Taechu, but at least I can stop him from controlling Thorpe, Bobby, and the others' minds. The professor exerted all his strength, his elegant and handsome face twisted ferociously, and sweat seeped out of it. He thought so. Boom. Two invisible psychic powers bombarded each other in the air, producing a thunderous explosion. The professor's body trembled violently, and blood spurted out of his 7 orifices like a fountain. His expression changed drastically as he looked at Zhou Xian in horror and said weakly, "Your psychic power is strengthening." "Yes. Even if I give you the blood orchid, even if I give you another 100 years, You are still not my opponent. Zhang Tian was calm and composed as he said indifferently, "Today I'll show you what true spiritual power is." Boom, boom. The small golden lake on Zhang Tian's forehead rippled, and a mighty and ferocious golden-armored general leaped out, waving the green dragon crescent blade, stirring up clouds of dust as he ran toward the professor. "Stop him." Boom, boom, boom. Many blue storm arcanists and gene mutants attacked together, but they could not stop him at all. "Get out of the way." The professor was shocked to realize that this golden-armored general was actually a condensation of Zhang Tian's psychic power, and ordinary physical attacks were useless. However, it was extremely difficult to condense psychic power into a form, not to mention a humanoid form that might even have its own consciousness. This was too terrifying. The professor's eyes suddenly emitted rays of light as deep as the sea. He urged all of his psychic power, which was as vast as the sea. He waved his hand and a long sword formed from psychic power pierced toward the golden-armored general. Boom. The golden-armored general swung his blade high and slashed down with the weight of Mount Tai. With a light crack, the professor's psychic power longsword instantly shattered, turning into psychic fragments that were annihilated. With a sharp sound, the golden-armored general's long sword struck the professor's bald head. There was no blood splatter and no wounds were left. The professor's body began to twitch and the earthworm-like blood vessels on his forehead throbbed. Cold sweat the size of beans poured out crazily, and he gasped like a drowning man with his mouth open. Woo-woo. Zhang Tian played the god-swallowing flute, and the soulless tune's melody was both resentful and sorrowful, and it quickly disintegrated and refined the professor's psychic power. White light particles overflowed from the professor's head, condensing into white tentacles that drilled into the golden-armored general's body. The golden light around the golden-armored general became even brighter and more condensed, and it immediately turned into a golden light that drilled into Zhang Tian's forehead. In fact, soul-searching and soul-controlling techniques were both against the laws of nature. Even at the Foundation establishment level, they could not be used carelessly, as they would devour one's blood essence and vital essence, causing one's cultivation to decrease. Therefore, normal cultivators would never dare to use this technique carelessly. Even though Zhang Tian had the gung metal divine body, after using the soul-controlling technique on Thorpe and Prince Bobby, it had a negative impact on his divine sense. Fortunately, he knew the soulless tune secret technique and had the god-swallowing flute, which was a supreme-grade Dharma treasure. After devouring the professor's psychic power, he quickly recovered. What a powerful psychic power. This is completely new. I seem to have seen the end of the universe. The light of truth. The professor's eyes rolled back, but his face was full of joy, admiration, and crazy excitement. He seemed to be on drugs or like a traveler who had been walking alone in a long dark tunnel for 10 days and 10 nights, and suddenly saw the light at the entrance of the tunnel. Following that, he suddenly let out a miserable howl as his head exploded. Blood, brain matter, and skull fragments splattered in the red mud of Africa, and there was a monkey's brain on fire next to it. The professor, sixth on the dark roll, one of the 5 giants of Blue Storm, was dead. What? All the overlords were shocked and took a few steps back subconsciously. They all knew that Zhang Tian was very powerful, but they always saw it in the information and didn't feel it so clearly. But now they truly felt the horror of Zhang Tian. Kang Teichu was too powerful. He controlled the consciousness of a warlord commander 10 kilometers away, and in the blink of an eye, he used his psychic power to condense the golden armor general and kill the world's #1 psychic attack overlord, the professor. At least when it came to psychic attacks, no one present was Zhang Tian's match. Kang Teichu, I admit that you are indeed very powerful. Stop the psychic control and I will withdraw immediately. Alexander roared in exasperation. That's the only way you can do. Do you have any other ideas? Zhang Tian said sarcastically. These words were not false. Zhang Tian only needed to send out a part of his spirit sense to control dozens of commanders, and he would be able to make thousands of troops kill each other. In less than 15 minutes they would all be wiped out. The professor's idea is really stupid. Good for him to die. Alexander was so angry that he almost exploded. He wanted nothing more than to stomp the professor's body. Winter Soldier and Blue Storm both knew about the blood orchid. Almost the same time Zhang Qianlei broke through San Juan, they came to Sidoni to fight for the blood orchid. However, Zeus's message that Jiang Tian was here disrupted their rhythm, making them timid and not dare to move. All these years Kong Teichu was too strong. Neither the professor nor Alexander had the confidence to win. In desperation, the two sides hit it off and decided to work together to deal with Kong Teichu. They must not let Kong Teichu get the blood orchid. Otherwise, the two top organizations in the world, Winter Soldier and Blue Storm, would be trampled under Jiang Tian's feet. Both sides shared intelligence and acted together. The professor took out the analysis of Kong Teichu's behavior and personality made by several top psychologists in the Pentagon. This top-secret document was more than 500 pages thick, but the conclusion was only a short line. Although Kong Teichu has superhuman abilities, he values his family and friends very much. He has deep feelings for his country and people. Therefore, the professor formulated this strategy: besieging the Chinese refuge camp in Cass Lake so that Jiang Tian would give up the blood orchid and get out of Sidoni. Chapter 594. This was essentially no different from a bandit kidnapping a hostage and threatening the hostage's family for ransom. Wolf King Alexander also felt that it made sense. However, he never expected Jiang Tian's spiritual energy to be so powerful. Not only did he not gain any advantage, but he also caused the Bear mercenary group to suffer heavy casualties, almost wiping them out. The Russian emperor would probably be furious if he heard about this. One must know that the Russian emperor was also a member of the KGB, and the leader of the Bear mercenary group, Constantine, had once fought alongside him. The entire organization had been established with the emperor's support, subduing the enemy without fighting. Seeing this scene, Lin Fengmian's eyes lit up. His confidence increased and he straightened his back. Jiang Tian's move was much more impressive than taking the head of a general from an army of 10,000. The enemy commander had become his most loyal subordinate. In truth, his guess was not wrong. Jiang Tian's divine sense could now extend tens of kilometers. Now it was useless even if the army was within 50 kilometers of Jiang Tian. Weapons with a range of 50 kilometers were also useless because they were all within the range of his divine sense. Only missiles and other weapons with a range of 50 kilometers, or weapons displayed within 50 kilometers without being detected by Jiang Tian, could pose a certain threat to Jiang Tian. However, Jiang Tian stopped after using his divine sense to blow up the heads of Crown Prince Bobby and Warlord Thorpe. There was no point in letting the rebel army and the Free Resistance army kill each other. They were all natives of Sidoni and had no culture. They were not bad people. The reason they had picked up guns was either because they had been instigated by Thorpe and Crown Prince Bobby or because they wanted to eat their fill. Kong Teichu, you killed the professor. Our blue storm will not rest until you're dead. Green Demon's eyes glinted fiercely as he roared like a tiger. His body suddenly expanded to 3 meters tall as he charged toward Jiang Tian. He had once consumed a gene-editing drug and awakened his body. He was incomparably powerful, but there were side effects. His personality was cruel, violent, and bloodthirsty. You're courting death. Lin Fengmian roared as he flew forward and punched out. The battle between the world's top powerhouses had finally begun with the death of the professor. Lin Fengmian was also on the Grandmaster role of Wuxia. He had reached the peak of the Transcendent state and was definitely one of the top 10 Transcendent Grandmasters in Wuxia. Before Huqing Tian and the others followed Jiang Tian into the half-step Immortal realm, he was even stronger than Huqing Tian and the others. He was even on par with Yi Zhantian. This punch was extremely ferocious, causing the wind to howl. A huge crack about 2 meters wide and more than 10 meters long was forcefully plowed open on the dirt square by the fist force storm. Rumble. There was a loud bang. The punch landed heavily on Green Devil's chest, which was shining with a strange green luster. Weak bug, you are not worthy to fight me. However, Luomo acted as if nothing had happened. With a sinister smile, he turned around and slapped at Lin Fengmian. Not good. Seeing this, Lin Fengmian's heart jumped. He only felt that this giant green palm was like a giant spirit slapping down, with an unstoppable force. He was afraid that he would be smashed into pieces. He quickly backed away. Rumble. The green demon's cauldron-like giant palms slammed into a stone house. The stone house was instantly torn apart and many stones were reduced to dust. Lin Fengmian was blown 10 meters away by the gust of wind. just as he was about to step forward. "All right, old Lin, step back. I will deal with him." Jiang Tian cracked a smile and took a step forward. Lu Mo's body was much stronger than Tai Sang the giant elephant, and his strength had surpassed that of a physique refinement grandmaster. Not even a half-step immortal state warrior could kill him. "Please forgive me for my incompetence." Lin Fengmian's face was full of shame. He jumped a few steps and retreated behind Jiang Tian. "Kong Teichu, I am going to twist your head off and kick it like a ball." Lu Mo clenched his fists and roared like the Hulk. His green muscles bulged like a coiling dragon, containing a terrifying explosive power. "Trash, I can send you flying with one slap." Jiang Tian didn't care about him. Rumble. Rumble. Green Demon was like an ancient ferocious god. He took large strides, causing the ground to tremble as he charged toward Jiang Tian. He covered 10 meters in one step. 100 meters disappeared under his running speed. "Go to hell." Lu Mo's face was twisted as he threw a punch. It was like a missile that burned the air. It contained endless power and could smash a tank into pieces. "Get out of my face." In response, Jiang Tian only waved his hand casually. Boom. Crack. The surging true essence was incomparably dense. Like a rolling mountain, it swept towards Lu Mo's swish. Green Devil was like a soccer ball that had been kicked away. He instantly flew more than 100 meters away. Rumble. He smashed into a tropical jungle. Towering trees that could be hugged by 2 or 3 people broke and crumbled one after another. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Attack. Kill him. Since the professor was dead, Wolf King Alexander immediately took over the command. He waved his hand and dozens of overlords attacked together. "I will avenge Andre." The alpha wolf, Gar, leaped out. His special combat uniform exploded as he ran as fast as lightning. His body quickly expanded and became a 3-meter-tall werewolf covered in hair. Whoosh! He slapped down with his claws. In the process of slapping down, the originally human hand quickly became covered in hair, and sharp bone hooks grew out, grabbing towards Jiang Tian's neck. Rumble. Ivan, the Siberian hammer, was still wearing a colorful vest made of tiger skin on a hot day, revealing his strong muscles. He ran behind Jiang Tian and swung a hammer the size of a bucket at Jiang Tian's back. Plehanova, the ice witch, attacked from afar. She muttered a spell and waved her hand. A cold aura spread between heaven and earth. Crack, crack. Sharp ice thorns began to spread from her feet toward Jiang Tian. They could easily freeze and penetrate everything. At the same time, the Sea Lady of Blue Storm also attacked. A white cyclone with a radius of 10 meters fell from the sky. Lightning flashed in it and shrouded Jiang Tian. Although the cyclone was small, its power was comparable to a tropical hurricane. It contained a chaotic force field and majestic power. It could tear apart a warship and a half-step divine state master easily. Garl, the wolf, is a direct descendant of Alexander. His blood is pure and he has the power of a half-step divine state master like Wuxia. Ivan, the Siberian hammer, is a genetic mutant created by the Winter Soldier Laboratory. He can smash an armored vehicle with a hammer. The Sea Lady seems to be a newly cultivated arcanist. But she is also level X, comparable to the professor. Plehanova's ice witchcraft can reduce boiling molten steel to -10 degrees Celsius in a second. Ms. Catherine, the founder of the butterfly skeleton, was moved and her face changed color. She thought to herself. She couldn't withstand a single blow from any of them. The lethality of the powerhouses on the power rankings was unimaginably strong. The key was that they cooperated very well. Those with strong physical bodies fought in close combat, while the long-range witches and arcanists cast spells from a distance. This was the result of their hard work over the past month. The power of their combined attacks was impossible to guard against. Kong Teichu was probably going to be defeated this time. Crack. Jiang Tian's jade-white palm gently reached out and grabbed the Wolfgarl's arm. He only shook it slightly. Crack. The Wolfgarl's arm, which was harder than diamond, was broken. Roar. He raised his neck and howled with all his might. Jiang Tian took a wrong step and pushed him back, causing him to collide with Ivan's giant hammer. Boom. The Wolfgarl's chest was smashed. He flew backward with blood spurting out of his mouth. Garl, I didn't mean to. Ivan didn't expect to accidentally injure his ally. He was stunned on the spot while holding his hammer, forgetting to attack again. Jiang Tian's figure flashed. His golden fist burned the air and smashed Ivan's chin with a tyrannical punch. Whoosh! Ivan flew 100 meters into the air like a monkey that had been ignited. He landed in the Sea Lady's cyclone and was torn to pieces. Rise! Jiang Tian stretched out his arms and gathered the ice spikes and cold air. He then twisted his body and smashed them toward the Sea Lady's head. This hugging and smashing seemed to be light as a feather. However, in the eyes of many experts, it was as if an ancient god had picked up Mount Buzhou. He picked up all the extreme cold and icicles that the snow witch Plehanova had unleashed and smashed them at the Sea Lady. Not good. At this moment, the Sea Lady's expression changed drastically. She was alarmed, and the seawater energy inside her was about to be frozen. Her sexy and fiery body was as flexible as a ghost. She changed her position 7 times in a second, leaving a few blurry afterimages in the air as she dodged the cold air by a hair's breadth. As she dodged, she saw from the corner of her eye that Jiang Tian had already turned into a dazzling golden light and shot out. His golden hand grabbed the ice witch's slender neck. 2 times the speed of sound. Even sublight speed. The Sea Lady cried out in alarm as if she had seen a demon. Even though she wasn't in the position of the ice witch, she still felt an indescribable fear. It was as if a poisonous snake had coiled around her body. Jiang Tian's speed was too terrifying. Let go of me. The ice witch struggled and screamed. She activated her ice spells to the maximum. Her originally blue eyes turned into strange white ice crystals. Instantly her surroundings changed. Extreme cold air spread out and completely enveloped Jiang Tian. Sharp ice swords, spears and icicles shot out as if they could even pierce through steel plates. Roar! She opened her mouth wide and shot out countless ice arrows toward Jiang Tian. At this moment she was like an ice hedgehog. The cold air she released was close to the absolute lowest temperature. Jiang Tian was instantly covered in ice like an ice sculpture. His body suddenly turned sluggish. Around him, the fallen leaves froze in the air. The water flow froze. The air and even space and time seemed to have solidified. Even the experts around him were rooted to the spot. A winter soldier 20 meters away died on the spot. Under this extreme low temperature, everything was dead silent and frozen. All life was severed. If one were to observe with a supermicroscope, they would discover that the horizontal movement of molecules was zero. The movement between molecules had already disappeared. Only weak electronic vibrations existed, almost enough to stop time. If Hu Qingtian and the others who had participated in the battle on Mount Everest were here, they would also cry out in alarm. The ice witch's secret technique was many times more powerful and cruel than the icicles used by the Master of Heaven Oyila. However, all of this was useless against Jiang Tian, who had the golden gung divine body. Crack! Jiang Tian blinked lightly, his long eyelashes trembling. The ice crystals that covered his body instantly shattered and peeled off like molting skin. Chapter 595. At that moment, Jiang Tian was like an ice sculpture that had come to life. The whole world also came to life. The leaves continued to fall, the wind started to blow, and the river started to flow. Jiang Tian's right hand twisted slightly. Crack! With a crisp sound, the ice witch's neck was broken and her headless corpse fell to the ground. Boom! Boom! At that moment, Garland, Siberian Hammer Ivan, and the icicles that Jiang Tian had picked up and smashed onto the ground. Everything happened in less than 3 seconds. The result was, rank 18 on the power ranking Garland, dead. Rank 9 on the power ranking Ice Witch Plehanova, dead. Rank 17 on the power ranking Siberian Hammer Ivan, dead. The Sea Witch was almost frozen to death on the spot. Her supernatural ability was temporarily suppressed, and she had completely lost her ability to fight. What? Seeing this, the pupils of the Winter Soldier's experts suddenly shrank. They were not surprised by Garland's death. After all, they had studied Jiang Tian's information. However, they had experienced the power of the Ice Witch's witchcraft. She cast it quickly, she could even severely injure the Wolf King. With this secret technique, the Ice Witch had once reached rank 9 on the CIA's power ranking and rank 8 on the power ranking. Master Kong, this is too domineering. Amazing. Seeing this scene, Lin Fengmian was so excited that his whole body was trembling. Even though Jiang Tian had killed Miyamoto Geniki and defeated the Cherry Blossom Society, Lin Fengmian still did not believe in Jiang Tian. After all, according to the rumors, the Winter Soldiers and Blue Storm were too powerful. They were like giants that far surpassed the Cherry Blossom Society and the Huaxiaolong Formation. But now Jiang Tian had killed them like cutting vegetables. He had killed 3 people in an instant and severely injured one. As expected, this kid's cultivation is comparable to a real human immortal. Sitting on a rock, Zhou Xian gulped down a jug of fruit wine in one gulp. He sighed contentedly and leisurely. His physical body and movement technique are far faster than before. Twice the speed of sound. Terrifying, truly terrifying. There was dead silence. Everyone stared in disbelief at the tall and imposing figure in the middle of the field. Many of the Blue Storm members revealed deep fear, subconsciously taking a few steps back. Their surging passion for vengeance for the professor quickly turned into cold sweat. In comparison, the Winter Soldiers were more valiant. Amidst the angry roars and roars, many of the members approached Jiang Tian with ferocious expressions. Their killing intent surged and their fighting spirit soared to the heavens. They were indeed worthy of the title of the fighting race. Kong Teichu, you're so ruthless. Wolf King Alexander's demonic red pupils suddenly shrank to the size of a needle tip. Filled with disbelief, he roared like a wolf. Today, the Winter Soldier organization will tear you to pieces. Alexander, you've overestimated your strength. You're just a few 4-legged beasts. You're not even fit to be my mounts. How dare you act so rashly? Jiang Tian's eyes were filled with disdain. He was like a god looking down on a lowly ant. Kong Teichu, I admit that you're very strong, but the wolf race is the most loyal, united and brave. You've killed Andre and our old friend Xiao Bin. Today you've killed Ivan and head Wolfgar. Alexander roared at the sky, his voice echoing for several kilometers. A violent and cruel killing intent surged wildly. We must take revenge. Even if all of us die in battle, we must avenge our comrades. Boom. Boom. Clothes exploded and the bulletproof vests made of special fabric were torn apart. All the members of the Winter Soldier organization suddenly swelled to more than 2 meters tall, revealing their muscular upper bodies. Muscles covered in exuberant body hair swelled and bulged like a twisting dragon, pushing to the limit of strength. 1, 2, 3, 87, 88, 89. Zhu Jiangchao counted subconsciously. At first his expression was relaxed, but gradually his eyes became more and more fearful. One by one the Winter Soldiers poured out of the dense forest as if there was no end to them. In the end there were as many as 156 of them. In the distance the faces of many Huaxia people were extremely solemn and then turned into despair. These bastards are going to take turns to fight us. Lin Fengmian gasped. His expression changed drastically and his voice trembled. It's like 156 green demons attacking together. It should be known that these Winter Soldiers had been genetically modified. Their bodies were extremely strong and their strength was comparable to or even surpassing that of a physique refinement grandmaster. They could withstand the strafing of machine guns and artillery shells. With such a terrifying body, even one of them could dominate the world and render the military and police helpless. With so many Winter Soldiers working together, it was enough to overturn a tank division. However, no matter how strong Jiang Tian was, he was only one person. Even if his body was made of iron, how many nails could he crush? Many Winter Soldiers gradually approached. Although they walked upright, their bodies were covered in exuberant hair. Their protruding mouths were like the mouths of wolves, with long and sharp fangs protruding from their lips. Their crimson eyes were shining with a strange red light. Their hands were completely in the shape of wolf claws, but they were wider, revealing sharp bone hooks. What the hell is this? Are they all werewolves? Why are there so many of them? Lin Fengmian was frightened. The densely packed werewolf warriors surrounded Jiang Tian like an iron bucket. Are they werewolves? Brother, count me in. I haven't killed a werewolf before. Zhang Qianlei was thrilled to see this. Yes, let's help you together. Huang Linger's face turned pale. She was full of nervousness and uneasiness. They're not real werewolves. Most of them are warriors modified with werewolf DNA. Jiang Tian said calmly, don't worry. I can deal with these animals alone. Alessandro was a real descendant of the werewolves, but in Zhang Tian's eyes, it was just SOSO. He had seen the dark moon werewolves in outer space years ago. They could absorb the grand moonlight of the stars and were as strong as golden core cultivators. The elite overlords among them could even travel across the universe and tear apart crystal warships with their bare hands. The werewolves on Earth, even if they were purebred, were far inferior to them. The difference was like heaven and earth. Moreover, these werewolves were actually humans who had been edited with werewolf DNA fragments. Oh my god. So the Winter Soldier organization really has werewolf DNA warriors. So these big countries are doing gene editing experiments that have long been banned by other countries. This time it's definitely going to be big news. I just don't know if Kong Teichu is a match for them. In the depths of the forest, a blonde girl stood on top of a tree. She had a high-speed camera on her shoulder, and her sexy body was trembling with excitement. Patter. An unruly werewolf DNA warrior stared at Zhang Tian with bloodthirsty eyes and charged toward Zhang Tian. A shiny spear with a cold gleam pierced through the air and stabbed toward Zhang Tian's chest. But Zhang Tian countered, grabbing the tip of the spear and pulling it into his bosom. Then he kicked out. Rumble. The werewolf DNA warrior's chest instantly exploded, and he was sent flying dozens of meters away. He knocked down 3 of his comrades before rolling on the ground. Kill him. Bite his throat and tear him to pieces. They were humans, but they had been edited with werewolf DNA fragments, and their personalities had become as savage and violent as the werewolves. Zhang Tian's decisiveness in killing them did not extinguish their arrogance. Instead, it made them even more bloodthirsty and belligerent. Blood was about to spurt out of their eyes, and they became even redder and more demonic, flickering with an ominous glint. Rumble. Amidst the earth-shattering roars and howls, the werewolf DNA warriors charged toward Zhang Tian like a tide. They had the spirit of teamwork. Every 7 people formed a team and they cooperated with each other with great tacit understanding. They were originally elites selected from the entire Russian race, and after being genetically modified by the werewolf DNA, their physical strength was even stronger. Each of them was comparable to a martial arts master. They leaped up and down, running around. Some opened their bloody mouths to bite and some slapped with their huge claws. The sharp bone claws pierced through the air, and even an immortal state expert would be torn to pieces. Zhang Tian only smiled faintly at this. His body rushed forward. 3 werewolf DNA warriors were sent flying. 2 of them were smashed to pieces and the last one was sent flying while howling like a dead dog. Whoosh. Zhang Tian stepped forward, leaned back and threw the spear out like a javelin. With a cold gleam, the spear instantly broke through twice the speed of sound. Twice the speed of sound. Puff, puff, puff. 7 werewolf DNA warriors who were about to charge down were pierced through by the spear. Under Zhang Tian's sharp spear, the werewolf DNA warriors, who had copper skin and iron bones that could withstand the bombardment of cannonballs, could not withstand a single blow. The spear pierced through the 7 werewolf DNA warriors like meat skewers, and the surging airwaves sent them flying. A path was blasted open by the werewolf DNA warriors, and they were nailed to a mountain wall. Seeing this scene, many werewolf DNA warriors were shocked. They howled in a low voice and subconsciously took a few steps back. Zhang Tian could kill 7 werewolf DNA warriors with a single blow. Did this not mean that Zhang Tian only needed a little more than 20 blows to kill all of them? Seeing this, even the Wolf King Alexander was shocked. He could not believe it, and then he howled toward the sky. Don't be afraid of him. He only needs to break through the sound barrier to kill you. Even if he is at the peak of the immortal state, even if he is a human immortal from Wuxia, he can't keep breaking the sound barrier to attack. He won't be able to hold on any longer. Bastard, you underestimate humans too much. End this battle in 5 blows. Zhang Tian smiled disdainfully and attacked again. First blow. As soon as Zhang Tian finished speaking, he waved his fingers. Clang. One sound. A gung metal chi weapon, which was over 20 meters long, swept out like a broken silver vase. The current gung metal chi weapon was different from before. There were dense runes flashing on it, and its lethality had been greatly increased. It was more than 10 times stronger than before. The previous gung metal chi weapon could cut through special steel, but now it was so sharp that it could cut through almost anything. Even pure chromium, large pieces of diamond, and even titanium alloy could be easily cut through. It could be said that there were only a few special metals in the world that could withstand this attack. The dazzling golden light swept across like a fan. Chapter 596. Howl, howl, howl. Boo-woo. Amidst the miserable howls, more than 30 Wolfman genetic warriors were sliced in half at the waist. Blood gushed out like a tide and steaming internal organs flowed all over the ground. The pungent smell of blood soared into the sky. Their bloodlines were powerful and their vitality was vigorous. They didn't die immediately. They crawled and struggled on the ground, leaving behind streaks of stinking blood. They let out hair-raising howls and curses. The scene was exceptionally bloody and tragic. Second move. Jiang Tian's expression was calm. He raised his jade-white palm and patted it down lightly as if he was patting dust. Boom. A huge palm about 15 meters long appeared out of thin air 100 meters in the air. On it, golden light flashed and bloomed with thousands of auspicious colors. It was incomparably real and condensed. Even the lines on the palm could be seen clearly. It was like the five-finger mountain. Countless Tao patterns were inscribed on it, and streams of heaven and earth spirit chi were attracted to it, making the golden palm even more resplendent and heavy. What a monster! He's simply a freak of the cultivation world. Seeing this, Zhang Qianlei slapped his thigh and his eyes widened. He couldn't describe his shock anymore. This palm condensed by Jiang Tian could be said to be a combination of magic and martial arts. Moreover, it had reached the pinnacle of perfection. The golden palm condensed by Jiang Tian's aura. However, the Tao patterns on it were top-notch spells. They continuously poured heaven and earth spirit chi into it and transformed it into metal spirit chi. If he fought Jiang Tian after this breakthrough, he probably wouldn't be able to withstand 3 palms from Jiang Tian. Before the huge palm arrived, the violent pressure first arrived. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Violent winds swept in all directions and countless dust-dried branches and withered leaves flew into the air. Boom. Towering trees collapsed one after another and basketball-sized rocks burst out like bubbles. What is this? Many werewolves raised their heads. Their demonic blood-red eyes were filled with horror and fear. Rumble. The dozen or so werewolf warriors directly under the huge palm fell to their knees uncontrollably. Some were even forced to lie flat on the ground. Even if they screamed and struggled with all their might, and were so tired that they vomited blood and their blood vessels burst, they couldn't break free at all. Boom. The giant palm slammed down. A crater more than a meter deep appeared. Blood seeped out from the gaps between the fingers and the edges of the giant palm. When the giant palm dissipated, only then did everyone see that only a pile of rotten flesh and blood was left of the dozen werewolves in the deep pit. This is too strong. The Sea Lady and the others from Blue Storm were terrified. These Wolfman genetic warriors were comparable to S-class or even X-class ability users. Their strength was roughly on par with Qin Feng's group. If they went up to fight with Jiang Tian, they would probably end up with the same fate. Rumble. At this time, the situation of the battlefield changed once again. Numerous Wolfman genetic warriors retreated one after another. The 7 alpha wolves, on the other hand, charged side by side, each wielding a weapon at Jiang Tian in tacit cooperation. These 7 alpha wolves were all over 3 meters tall. They were true descendants of werewolves and were not humans. They were the leaders of their respective teams and could be said to be the elites of the elites. Their strength far surpassed that of the leader, Garland, who had been killed by Jiang Tian, and was comparable to a half-step divine realm warrior. Ants will always be ants. Do you think being a little bigger can change your nature? Jiang Tian snorted disdainfully. His right hand flicked continuously as if playing a pipa without a trace of smoke or fire. Immediately, 7 golden finger beams containing Tao patterns pierced through the air. They were extremely fast, like armor-piercing bullets shot out from a Barrett sniper rifle, but also like artillery shells shot out from a small-caliber cannon. The 7 alpha wolves all sensed the danger of these golden finger beams. Their reactions were also extremely fast. Their bodies moved irregularly like snakes, jumping up and down to dodge. Their movements were so fast that they could even dodge bullets. However, it was useless against the finger beams. Those thick golden finger beams, however, seemed to have a mind of their own. They were also like cruise missiles, firmly locking onto their targets and accurately shooting through their heads like maggots in a tarsal bone. Bang, bang, bang. In the blink of an eye, the heads and chests of the 7 alpha wolves exploded in an instant. Thick pillars of blood spurted out from their necks and shattered chests like fountains. It was as if a rain of blood was falling from the sky, and it did not dissipate for a long time. Kong Teichu, you have successfully angered me. Bang. The Wolf King could no longer endure such heavy losses. He took a step forward and stomped a deep hole in the ground. Ancient Moon God, on the night of the full moon when the aconite grass is in full bloom, please bestow power to your people in the name of the Guardian of the Night. The Wolf King Alexander howled at the sky and roared at the moon. The sound waves were like rolling torrents spreading out for miles. At this moment the full moon seemed to have sensed the Wolf King's summons, and it rippled like water. Rays of milk like moonlight flowed slowly. The moonlight particles were like the aurora borealis, misty and instantly changing. It was magnificent and moving, and all of it poured into the Wolf King Alexander's body. Chi. A pillar of moonlight as thick as a bucket fell from the sky and hit the Wolf King. Under the cover of the pillar of light, Alexander's body emitted a dazzling white light. Like a movie special effect, he began to transform. Boom. His high-top military boots exploded, bursting open by a huge hairy wolf foot with bone hooks. Crack. His legs were like balloons being inflated, rising and expanding. His whole body instantly changed. His bones stretched and cracked, and his chest was quickly filled with thick and powerful muscles. His face elongated, grew hair and fangs and turned into the shape of a wolf's head. It only took a few seconds. Alexander transformed from an ordinary old Russian man into a huge werewolf 5 to 6 meters tall. He was like a small mountain entrenched there, and his aura was intimidating, giving people a huge psychological pressure. This is the legendary moon-worshipping wolf clan, and also the most powerful wolf clan. This is a clan with innate abilities. They can naturally absorb the essence of the moon and turn it into surging energy. And today is the night of the full moon. Kong Teichu is in danger this time. The eyes of some blue storm powerhouses flickered with shock as they looked at the violent figure that was as majestic as a mountain with admiration and envy. I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it. It seems that I can only tear your throat and devour your flesh. The transformed Wolf King opened his mouth, and like a knell of death, the rolling sound waves reverberated in the air, causing ripples to appear in the air. A huge aura spread in all directions. Violent, bloodthirsty, cold and cruel. It was intimidating and made people's hearts palpitate. Even many blue storm powerhouses subconsciously took a few steps back. The hair all over his body stood up like thorns and his feet stomped on the ground. 2 deep footprints were left on the ground as he dashed towards Jiang Tian like a tsunami. Terrifying, his strength is at least 50 tons. This kind of strength is enough to tear apart a deity. Seeing this, the blue storm powerhouses sighed in horror. The distance of 200 meters was covered in a flash under the Wolf King's mad dash. Whoosh! He punched toward Jiang Tian. With this punch, even the air was annihilated. A vacuum appeared and the surrounding air was turbulent. The surging power contained within was enough to shatter a mountain. Clang! Jiang Tian brought out the mountain-carrying turtle shield to test the Wolf King's strength. The Wolf King's fist smashed into the shield, and the surging power actually shattered the mountain-carrying turtle shield into pieces. His strength is not bad. He's definitely stronger than Bai Tianlei and his wife. In the distance, a serious expression appeared on Zhang Qianlei's face for the first time. The mountain-carrying turtle shield was originally the shell of the ancient Eastern Sea divine beast, the mountain-carrying turtle shield. It was indestructible. After being refined by Jiang Tian several times and engraved with enhancement patterns and runes, it weighed 10 tons and had astonishing defensive power. It could flatten a tank and withstand dozens of artillery bombardments. This meant that the Wolf King's strength could tear a tank apart. In terms of strength, it should be on the same level as Jiang Tian. Boom. This time, Jiang Tian shot out a high-grade fireball talisman. It turned into a fire dragon and burned toward the Wolf King to test his spiritual power. Whoosh! The Wolf King opened his bloody mouth, and his chest and lower abdomen caved in as he swallowed the 10-meter-long fire dragon into his stomach. A woo. Then with a howl, the Wolf King opened his mouth and his chest and abdomen shook. A stream of flames shot straight toward Zhou Xian. Master, let me help you. Seeing this, Qian Monkey roared and suddenly transformed. He was also 5 meters tall, comparable to the Wolf King. He leaped up and shot 20 meters into the air, waving his big iron staff and smashing it toward the Wolf King with the weight of Mount Tai. Boom. The staff smashed down like an ancient mountain, weighing more than a few tons and capable of capsizing and sinking a warship. This is the giant ape that fought with Kong Techu against the 28th Eastern Sea Mixed Brigade. It's just like King Kong in the movies. It can definitely tear a Tyrannosaurus Rex apart and overturn a tank squadron. Many Blue Storm powerhouses were shocked and envious. How great would it be if they could get this giant ape to the United States military laboratory and clone its genes and mass produce it? The Qian monkey's attack was indeed terrifying, but the Wolf King was not afraid at all. He allowed the equaling Heaven Saint ape to smash his shoulder with the club. His body sank slightly and then he punched out. Whoosh! The Qian monkey flew back dozens of meters. He did a nimble flip in the air and landed firmly on the ground. However, a hint of fear flashed in his eyes. He grimaced in pain. One of his ribs was broken. This was not because the bloodline of the sacred battle apes was not as strong as that of the moon-worshipping werewolves. It was because Qian monkey's cultivation was too shallow. He had only cultivated for a few years. On the other hand, the Wolf King Alexander had made his debut in the first battle. No one knew how long it had been. Oh. Seeing this, many of the werewolf genetic warriors were excited. They howled at the moon and cheered for their leader. This Wolf King is too scary. It has the power to destroy the world. It's not inferior to Zhang Qianlei. Lin Fengmian was already sweating. Even from afar, he could feel the majestic and intimidating power contained within the Wolf King. It was comparable to Wuxia's top-notch martial arts. The Qian monkey is comparable to an immortal state warrior. The Wolf King's cultivation should be beyond that. He might even be a half-step human immortal. Zhang Qianlei's face darkened. He used a secret spiritual technique to remind Zhang Tian to be careful. I was just testing. I didn't use even 10% of my strength. Zhang Tian smiled calmly. Let's begin. He punched out. This was his first real attack. Chapter 597. Zhang Tian's jade-white hand slowly clenched into a fist. He threw a punch that seemed slow but was actually fast towards the Wolf King. Boom. Suddenly, the seventh metal true essence formed a basketball-sized fist and punched out. The air was turbulent and the wind howled as if thousands of soldiers were galloping. The sound wave was like the roar of a real dragon. The fist let out thousands of rays of golden light and dyed the turbulence in the air golden. There were also Dao runes floating in the air and each of them could kill a transcendent grandmaster. The phenomenal success 7th metal divine body against the moon wolf. A level 7 chi refinement cultivator against the most powerful overlord in Russia, the head instructor of the winter soldiers. The ultimate battle between the number 1 cultivator in Wuxia and the moon-worshipping Wolf King, who had been reclusive in Russia for decades, finally broke out. I can kill you in 5 moves. Since Zhang Tian's rebirth, this was the first time he had encountered someone with such a heaven-defying physical body. His battle intent surged and his black hair fluttered like a waterfall. His long robe fluttered in the wind. Let's try it. The Wolf King let out a howl that sounded like a wolf's howl and continued to press forward. His desire to battle was wild, as if he wanted to destroy the heaven and earth. Boom. Under countless shocked gazes, the 7th metal fist and the alpha wolf's claw collided. Suddenly, the turbulence in the air was scattered. With the two of them as the center, a powerful shockwave was formed and spread in all directions. A 10-meter deep pit was formed where the two of them were standing. The shockwave spread out and the earth seemed to have been pushed by a bulldozer, exposing a new layer of soil. The surrounding stone houses crumbled one after another, sending rubble flying through the air. The people who watched the battle from a few hundred meters away could feel the terrifying pressure. Many towering trees trembled and swayed uneasily. Even Kos Lake, which was 10 kilometers away, had huge waves. The entire valley of the K tribe shook violently. It's terrifying. I can't believe the alpha wolf's attack is so powerful. Lin Fengmian's eyes were filled with shock. Swish. Boom. The Wolf King retreated more than 20 meters in the air, its feet firmly planted into the ground before it could stabilize its body. Looking at the wolf claw that had collided with his claw, it was already lacerated and bleeding, revealing the eerie white finger bones. However, Jiang Tian didn't move at all. His handsome face was calm and his white robe was spotless, indicating that he still had energy to protect his clothes. I can't believe that a boy from Wuxia has such a powerful body. The alpha wolf exclaimed. His voice was like thunder and there was a hint of fear in his eyes. Form. The flesh of the alpha wolf's claw wriggled and its skin and hair quickly recovered. Jiang Tian narrowed his eyes when he saw this. The alpha wolf's body was indeed powerful. It was almost indestructible. It was comparable to the Dao body or the peak immortal state. Most importantly, he could recover rapidly, which was similar to the vampire race's immortal body. Was it because of his body or did he know some secret arts? Ah, beast, at least you have some eyes. Kneel down and admit defeat and I'll spare your life. Jiang Tian sneered in disdain. Go to hell. The alpha wolf was furious. He immediately repaired the damage on his fist and rushed forward. As he waved his hands, wisps of cold moonlight gathered and formed a long saber in his hand. However, it was extremely sharp and heavy like a curved silver moon. During the Battle of Leningrad, the Alpha Wolf had turned into an ordinary Soviet soldier and defeated an armored brigade of the German 18th Army with this moonlight blade. He waved the moonlight blade and charged at Jiang Tian again. Meanwhile, Jiang Tian stepped on the air and shot 100 meters into the air. A 20-meter-long gung metal chi blade formed in his hand. He gripped the hilt of his saber tightly with both hands, raised it high above his head and slashed down violently. Block. The Wolf King's heart suddenly tightened. He roared and raised his moonlight saber to block the attack with his muscular arms and hands. Clang. Under Jiang Tian's attack. Whether it was the moonlight blade that could cut a tank or the werewolf's body that was harder than steel, they couldn't withstand a single blow. The moonlight blade shattered like thin ice, and the fragments instantly dissipated into wisps of moon essence. A large wound dozens of centimeters deep appeared on the alpha wolf's left shoulder. Blood gushed out. Great. Master Kong is mighty. Domineering. Lin Fengmian, Zhu Jiangchao, Yuan Kursen and the others cheered. Who was the alpha wolf? He was the chief instructor of the winter soldiers and the strongest man in Russia. He was like Miyamoto Genichi in Japan and Yi Tianren and his son in Wuxia. But he was still suppressed by Master Kong. Huang Linger's clear eyes rippled with the light of glory, and the corners of her mouth rose slightly. This was her man who could suppress the strongest man in Russia. It was indeed a beautiful fight. His breakthrough this time has increased his combat power by more than 10 times. Even Zhang Qianlei stood up with excitement in his eyes. Old Dragon, Master Kong seems to be fighting? Should we go and help? Shirlei, who was more than 3 meters tall, stood at the top of the cliff of the Blood Orchid waterfall. He looked at the K tribe in the distance and frowned. If Master Kong doesn't take us to the K tribe to eat roasted monkeys and drink fruit wine, Old Dragon, I won't go. The dragon snake lay on its back in the deep pool under the waterfall, rubbing the dirt on its body with its tail and said lazily, "Come on, you've eaten so many people in the K tribe. If you go, you'll scare them to death, right?" Shirlei frowned and complained. "Humans are just insects. What's so strange about eating them?" The old dragon was definitely a lazy guy. He yawned listlessly and said, "Besides, Master Kong asked us to guard the blood orchid. He's so strong, so he should be able to deal with it. I just flew over to take a look. It's the American Blue Storm and the Russian Winter Soldier." Qing Linzi said worriedly, "They're very strong." "Strong? That's nothing. Let's go over and take them as our human pets." The dragon snake jumped up and stuck out its tongue excitedly, its eyes bursting with greed. At this moment, a bolt of lightning streaked across the sky and flew over. Several strong figures suddenly appeared. "Damn, the old foe is here." The old dragon turned around and was immediately shocked. He subconsciously curled up as if he had seen a ghost. Qing Linzi's expression changed drastically and he took a step back. Shirlei's eyes were filled with shock and vigilance. Palace of Gods, the third king god powerhouse on the power ranking. Athena. Second king god, the queen of heaven powerhouse ranked 5th on the power ranking. Hera. Especially the last one who made them even more fearful. Palace of gods leader powerhouse on the power ranking. Zeus. Behind them, there was a group of powerhouses with powerful auras and wearing medieval armor. Back then you killed thousands of British colonial soldiers, but I didn't kill you. Instead, I let you live and let you be the guards of the blood orchid. But you don't seem to be doing your duty. Zeus walked in the air with holy light around his body. His voice, which sounded like the voice of the great Tao, was holy, mighty and vast. It was as if he was overlooking the heroes from the ancient sky. Lord Zeus, we also want to do our duty, but Kong Techu is too strong. We're no match for him. Before Qing Linzi and Shirley could say anything, the old dragon wriggled his body forward and said with a fawning expression, Master, I'm your loyal servant. I've been waiting here for more than 60 years, eating wild fruits and monkeys every day. I can't even bear to eat a leaf of the blood orchid. I've always been loyal. The sun and moon can be my witness. He prostrated himself at Zeus' feet and began to recount Jiang Tian's evil deeds. He cried bitterly and said, But Kong Techu, this villain, didn't stomp on my cute and handsome head until it exploded. Is he stomping on my head? He's stomping on your honorable Lord Zeus' face. Hurry up and kill him and avenge me. Stinky worm, do you have any shame? A loyal servant doesn't serve a second master. Qing Linzi and Shirley were in a predicament. They knew that the old dragon was shameless, but they didn't expect the old dragon to be so shameless. Who was the one who swore to be Master Kang's obedient, cute and loyal pet? I haven't even finished my sentence and you're already like this? Where's your shame? Do you still have any shame? I've waited for decades. The blood orchid has finally matured. It even bore Orchid's son. Zeus stared at the few blood orchids on the cliff of the waterfall with a burning gaze, full of greed and excitement. Yes, they're waiting for you to pick them. Such a precious immortal herb, Jiang Taichu was but a mere mortal, yet he wanted to eat it? Was he even worthy? You're the only one who's worthy of her. The old dragon said with a flattering smile. But there seemed to be a few seals here. A strange look flashed across Zeus' face. He looked at the old dragon and said lightly, Although I can forcibly break them, I might hurt those blood orchids. It's better for you to help pick them. That's right. Kong Techu is too cunning. Let us do it. The old dragon rolled his eyes and turned around, shouting at Qing Linzi, What are you waiting for? Hurry up and help great god Zeus harvest. Qing Linzi had no choice. Zeus had once come to the blood orchid waterfall and suppressed them. All these years, even if they sat on the spirit spring and ate the leaves of the blood orchid, their cultivation level was still very slow. They were definitely no match for Zeus, who was supported by the entire Holy See and the European Union. When Shirley plucked a few immortal ascension blood arrow orchids, the old dragon suddenly twisted his body and shot up, entangling Zeus tightly. He shouted, Birdmen run. Give them to Master Kong. Bro, hold on. Qing Linzi flapped his wings and broke the sound barrier in an instant, flying towards the K tribe like a flash of lightning. You're courting death. Zeus was furious. He waved his scepter and with a boom, electric light was produced and completely enveloped the old dragon. Boom. The dazzling electric light and extreme temperature were no less than the ninth heaven divine thunder summoned by Zhang Qianlei. In an instant the old dragon's body was translucent. Even his internal organs and dragon bones were clearly visible. Black smoke billowed out and his scales were charred and fell off. However, his bloodline was special and his body was abnormally strong. He wouldn't die for a while. Although he was trembling and grimacing in pain, he still looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. This is a thunder tribulation. I'll take it as a tribulation. Come on, hit me with electricity. The numbness felt pretty good. Zeus, you old bastard, you killed my partner back then. I'll pester you to death. Chapter 598. Kill him. Seeing Qing Linzi flying further and further away, Zeus stomped on the old dragon's tail and smashed it into pieces. With a shake of his arms, he knocked the old dragon down. Then he flew up and kicked the old dragon 100 meters away. Yes. Athena's phoenix-like eyes were filled with killing intent. She leaned back, her sexy, fiery and vigorous body arched backward, and threw the strangely shaped spear in her hand like a javelin. Puff! The spear broke through 2 times the speed of sound and was about to catch up with Xianxia in a second. Suddenly, a loud noise was heard and half of the valley shook violently. A mighty figure soared into the sky, filled with the aura of the yellow earth. He threw a heavy punch at the spear. Whoosh! The long spear only slightly deviated, brushing past Xianxia's body and heavily shooting into a mountain peak. The mountain peak exploded and rocks flew everywhere. A 200-meter-tall mountain peak was razed to the ground. However, Shirley was thrown a few dozen meters away by the force of the spear and landed heavily on the ground. His fist and half of his arm were shattered and the remaining muscles were hanging down like silk. But seeing Xianxia had already reached the K tribe, he let out a relieved smile. At that moment he heard the old dragon's useless cries and pleas from the bushes. "Your Excellency Zeus, your loyal servant did something impulsive and offended the gods. But he has realized his mistake and is deeply regretting it." The old dragon's voice was trembling and sobbing. "Please don't kill me. I am about to die. Why should you dirty your hands? How dare you, a little snake? Go to hell." Zeus's face was full of anger. He coldly snorted and waved his hand. A mountain peak more than 100 meters high collapsed. Rocks flew and rolled, covering the old dragon. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The next moment he stepped on a blazing holy light and turned into a beam of light that pierced through the sky and shot toward the K tribe. The K tribe had been razed to the ground by Zhou Xian and Alexander the Wolf King. The Wolf King quickly healed his shoulder that was cut open. He roared crazily and made the moonlight converge into 2 cloud-like balls of light, lifting him up into the sky. Bang bang bang. Explosions rang out continuously, like continuous explosions of muffled thunder. The 2 of them exchanged blows in the air, each displaying their unique skills. Wolf King Alexander had been through hundreds of years of war and cultivated in the extreme north. His body was much stronger than Miyamoto Geniki's and Immortal state warriors. He was as strong as a half-step human deity or a saint and even stronger than Zhang Qianlei. He had roamed the world for 100 years. Whether it was his physical body, cultivation, vision, or experience, they had all reached the point of perfection. The 2 of them unleashed all kinds of divine abilities and secret techniques at their fingertips. Their movement techniques were also extremely fast. Apart from Zhang Qianlei, Hai Nu, and a few other people who could see it clearly, the onlookers could only see a golden divine radiance and a black storm colliding frequently in the air. Clang, clang. Every time the 2 of them collided, it was like the sound of a great bell, shaking the eardrums and shaking the hearts of the people. Boom. The 2 of them retreated 100 meters away from each other, putting some distance between them. Everyone saw that there was a fist-sized hole in the Wolf King's chest. White bones could be seen and blood was gushing out of it. He was so tired that he was panting and trembling. The recovery speed of his body had slowed down and his strength was being worn down by Zhang Tian. However, Zhang Tian was still calm and his white robe was spotless. Apparently he still had energy left. "Let's beat this beast up," Zhu Jiangchao said excitedly. "Is Master Kong going to win?" Yuan Kursen asked behind a giant rock. "Yes, the Wolf King is getting weaker. Master Kong will kill him in 10 minutes. Lin Fengmian's eyes were glittering with excitement. Swish. While the Wolf King was panting. "Humph. You can stop your little tricks now." Zhang Tian suddenly pointed at the air and the finger aura went straight for the Caucasian Grand Shaman, the Prophet. "Sure enough, you found out. But you can't kill me." Half a minute before Zhang Tian made his move, the great shaman, the Prophet, had a slight change in expression. Her figure flashed left and right as she retreated, cleverly dodging Zhang Tian's finger aura. The Prophet. It said that she has mastered the mysterious secret technique of time and can foresee everything that happens 1 minute in advance. The Sea Maiden and the others exclaimed, "How can Kong Techu kill him under such circumstances?" "Not bad. You can actually foresee. But how can you be my match with this little foresight technique of yours?" Seeing this scene, Zhang Tian's pupils suddenly shrank. A crazy battle intent rose from the corner of his mouth. He made a series of hand seals and shouted angrily, "You're forcing me to use my great divine ability. Time stop." This was a great divine ability awakened after the completion of the Gung Metal Divine Physique. It could make time stop for a short time and then suddenly accelerate to restore balance. The gunmetal divine physique was originally one of the 12 strongest immortal physiques in the cultivation world. It was the ultimate technique of the gunmetal divine sect, a major cultivation sect of the human race in the starry sky. It had 9 transformations: myriad gold ancestor, indestructible golden body, isolation force field, eternal exile, and other 99 great divine abilities. These divine abilities were gradually activated as Zhang Tian's cultivation increased and his physique strengthened and transformed. The gunmetal chi weapon was only the most basic one. But Time Stop was a powerful space-time divine ability. Once this divine ability was used, time within a 1-kilometer radius seemed to come to a standstill. Everything strangely came to a standstill. The wings of a huge long-legged mosquito suddenly stopped flapping and strangely floated in the air. The Wolf King had already waved his fist. The huge left wolf foot had already stepped out and stood on tiptoe as a support. But he was frozen on the ground in this posture like a sculpture. It was strange and peculiar. Zhang Qianlei noticed that it was Zhang Qianlei who drank the fruit wine, so he threw the wine bottle on the stone. At this moment, the wine and pottery shards that flew out still maintained their threatening posture. The bean-sized wine floated in the air but did not fall down. The great shaman prophet also had the same fate. She was like a robot who was pressed the pause button and was frozen in the air. 3 centimeters away from her face, a fly lifted its butt and was about to fly away. Its dense compound eyes reflected her horrified expression. The whole world was silent and turned into a still picture. They were panicking, but they knew that they could do nothing except think, and their senses were not sealed, including blinking their eyes and the weakest breath. You can foresee everything that will happen in a minute. But I'm sorry, my time stop is a minute and a half. Everyone looked on helplessly as Zhang Tian lazily walked up to the prophet. They looked on helplessly as he took out a Gungjin Qi blade and cut off the prophet's neck with a Qi sound. Wolf King, I don't know how many times you can condense your body without her healing technique. Zhang Tian was not in a hurry to kill the Wolf King. Instead, he gently pinched his fingers and the world suddenly moved. And it moved very fast, 10 times or 100 times faster than usual, making the world reach a new balance. The headless body of the great shaman prophet spurted out blood arrows and fell to the ground. Zhang Qianlei's wine and pottery fragments shot into the ground like arrows. The green-headed fly flying in front of the great shaman was instantly thrown far away. Oh my god! What secret technique did he use just now? Did he control time? He stopped time, exceeding the 1 minute that the prophet predicted in advance. Kill her. This is the real time stop technique. Even if it's only 90 seconds, it's too terrifying. The Sea Lady, the Golden War General, and the other experts were all shocked. Their eyes were filled with fear and shock, and they gasped as if they had seen a ghost. Heaven, earth, mountains, and rivers froze, and the stars, sun, and moon stopped. Zhang Qianlei frowned and pondered. Then he slapped his thigh and exclaimed excitedly. Kong Teichu's supernatural power is comparable to that of Quanzhen's founder, Lu Chunyang, perfected Lu. Could it be that he has already stepped into the realm of Earth Golden Immortal? Whoosh! As Zhang Tian pinched his fingers, the Wolf King suddenly accelerated uncontrollably and rushed toward Zhang Tian at twice the speed of sound. Without the great shaman to heal you, I can kill you with one strike. Zhang Tian snorted and waved his fingers. A 20-meter-long Gingjin energy blade slashed down. Even though the Wolf King Alexander quickly dodged, he was still too slow. With a shrill scream, his right arm was cut off from the shoulder by Zhang Tian's blade. Billowing waves of blood spurted out like a fountain. Ouch! The Wolf King was sent flying 100 meters away. He was in so much pain that his eyes almost popped out. He looked up at the sky and howled. The protruding veins on his forehead throbbed wildly and his eyes were fierce and ferocious. But this time, even though he had performed a secret art to stop the bleeding, he didn't form a new arm. Just when everyone thought that Zhang Tian was going to win quickly. Suddenly, Zhang Qianlei looked in the direction of the Blood Orchid waterfall and said coldly, "An overlord is coming. Don't worry. Master Kong has set up a defensive array there. Let's watch the show. Watch Master Kong fight. So interesting." Lin Fengmian said leisurely and excitedly. "The defensive array is useless. I'm afraid it's the world's top thunder master Zeus who is here." Zhang Qianlei's eyes were full of fighting spirit, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Boom, boom. A few loud noises came from above the blood orchid waterfall. Whoosh. First Qing Linzi arrived at lightning speed and knelt on the ground. He held a few mature blood orchids in his hands and handed them to Jiang Tian. The Palace of Gods is here. The Palace of Gods. In an instant, the whole place was silent. All the overlords from the east and west were shocked. Shirley and Old Dragon are injured? Only Jiang Tian looked calm. He put the blood arrow orchid into his storage ring and a strange look flashed in his eyes. He then scanned the distance with his divine sense. In the sky, numerous figures flew across the void and shot over. Each and every one of them looked extremely holy. They were clad in armor from the Middle Ages and radiated with dazzling light. It was as if numerous suns were lining up in the sky. Zeus. The Palace of Gods is here. The Wolf King looked at Zeus and the overlords from the Palace of Gods with a complicated expression. Chapter 599. The werewolves had a deep connection with the Palace of the Gods. The werewolves and vampires were known as the dark alien races. In the Middle Ages of Western Europe, where plagues were rampant and technology was not yet developed, they were once very popular. They easily massacred cities, destroyed countries, and controlled the political power of small secular countries. But because of his bloodthirsty and cruel nature, he was not tolerated by the world. At that time, the experts of the Holy See and the demon hunters treated them as heretics and suppressed them. The war between the two sides lasted for 300 years and lasted for many days. According to statistics, in the 16th century, there were about 30,000 people in France alone who were thought to be werewolves or members of the Blood Clan. They were either hanged or burned at the stake by the Holy See. But at that time, the werewolves and blood breeds would still be able to compete with the Holy See and survive in the cracks. The true decline of the werewolves occurred after the Industrial Revolution and the rise of modern weaponry. During the First World War, the Palace of Gods and the Divine Temple Knights, who were supported by the Church, cooperated with the secular government and the army. They made use of the power of modern weapons and equipment to wipe out the werewolves and blood breeds from Western Europe. The young Wolf King and the entire moon-worshipping wolf clan were forced to migrate to the desolate Siberian highlands, where they lived a miserable life with no food to fill their stomachs. It wasn't until the outbreak of World War I and World War II that some werewolves gradually chose to cooperate with the Russian military to gain some living space. But even so, the werewolves were still not truly recognized by the Russian military. They were still guarded against and ostracized. On the battlefield, they were assigned the cruelest missions with the highest casualty rate. They were cannon fodder. It was only when Xiaobin escaped to Russia in the 1990s that genetic technology was on the rise that Xiaobin suggested to the Northern Army that they should combine martial arts, wolf genes, and modern military equipment to form the Winter Army. Only then did the moon-worshipping wolf clan obtain the status they deserved. This was also the reason why the Wolf King still treated Xiaobin as his best friend even though his combat strength was far inferior to the Wolf King's. But for Zeus, who had once driven his tribe out of Europe, the Wolf King's feelings were much more complicated. Jealousy, hatred, reverence, and fear. Most of the temple knights were middle-aged men, each of them brimming with vitality and strength. Each of them had reached the sage plane, which was comparable to Wuxia's martial Dao grandmasters and even immortal state warriors. They had wavy blonde hair and azure eyes that were as blue as the Atlantic Ocean. The men were very valiant, like gods descending from the heavens. The women were beautiful, so perfect that they were a bit flirtatious. Any one of them could be the cover model of a fashion magazine. The crosses on their chests, their golden armor, and their weapons radiated a holy light. This was a group of noble humans. Every one of them had an extraordinary identity and background. Many of them had been conferred nobility by the royal family, and their titles were hereditary. Their bloodlines were noble and they had glorious pasts. Zeus, Hera, and Athena, 3 supreme chief gods and 14 temple knights. Seeing this, the winter soldiers in Blue Storm showed deep fear. They bowed slightly to show the highest respect. As soon as Zeus, the 3 overgods, and the 14 temple knights appeared, they immediately suppressed their might. Compared to Zeus and the others, the winter soldiers were like a group of uncivilized beasts. Blue Storm, on the other hand, was overshadowed like a beggar in ragged clothes on the street. Zeus and the others weren't just for show. They were actually a level stronger. The Pantheon's history was almost as long as the Holy See, and their foundation was unimaginably deep. Blue Storm was only 100 years old and the Winter Soldiers only had a few decades of history. Even with the support of the entire country, their strength couldn't compare to the Pantheon's. Professor, Prophet. Have these poor children been sacrificed? Queen of Heaven Hera wore a golden robe from the Middle Ages. Her perfect face shone with a loving divine radiance, looking like a Virgin Mary. Looking at the bloodstains on the ground, she was full of sympathy. She shook her head helplessly. Wolf King Zeus warned you and hoped that you would cooperate with us. But you were stubborn. We underestimated Kong Techu's strength. It seems that only Lord Zeus can kill him. The Wolf King bowed deeply and took a few steps back. Then all the powerhouses bowed and retreated, expressing their highest respect to Zeus and the others, leaving the battlefield to Zeus and the others. Kong Techu, I was the first to discover the blood orchid. Hand it over. Finally Zeus spoke. Like a god looking down on an ant, he demanded directly as if it was only right and proper. You want it? Defeat me first. Otherwise scram back to your lair. Zhang Tian said indifferently. Demon, you dare defy the will of the gods? In the name of the gods I command you to hand it over. Zeus was enraged as he slammed his golden scepter on the ground. Suddenly lightning flashed in his eyes, and a powerful aura surged toward Zhang Tian. Gods? To you I'm the god. You're using my will to command me? What a joke. Zhang Tian's expression was cold. And you don't know what's good for you. Before Zeus could say anything, a temple knight stepped forward and looked at Zhang Tian provocatively. He shouted with a proud face, Zhang Tian. In the name of the gods I will burn your dirty and depraved soul. Repent. He held a giant cross in his hand and pressed it down on Zhang Tian. A sacred and bright light fell on Zhang Tian. At this moment, Zhang Tian was a little curious. What was that light? Were they really gods or the descendants of gods? However, as soon as he scanned with his divine will, Zhang Tian burst into laughter. His cross was inlaid with a rare crystal. The ancient alchemists had also carved ancient patterns on the cross, similar to Wuxia's talisman inscriptions. The talisman inscriptions could stimulate the energy contained in the crystal. The destructive power of the light was indeed shocking. It was comparable to the electromagnetic waves of gamma rays and could easily kill a transcendent grandmaster. However, it was far less powerful than lasers. In essence, it was similar to witchcraft and dharma spells. It was not a miracle. It must have been used by the ancient Holy See to confuse believers. The purpose of killing enemies was secondary. If this thing could hurt Zhang Tian, he would have wasted 10,000 years of his previous life and 3 years of his current life. Stop playing tricks. Get out of here. After his divine will found out what was going on, Zhang Tian slapped without hesitation. Boom. Under Zhang Tian's palm, whether it was the holy light cross, the armor, or even the ancient shield that was engraved with Daoist patterns, they all shattered within a second. The paladin's chest caved in and his internal organs were crushed. He was thrown a few dozen meters away and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood with pieces of his organs. Kong Techu, you are indeed a talent. Hera, the Queen of Heaven, was startled. Then her face softened and said condescendingly, like a god talking to her own people. If you surrender, hand over the blood orchid and submit to the sacred hall, we are willing to let you go. Kong Techu, even if you are the most powerful man in Wuxia, you are no match for Zeus. Athena, who was both respectful and fearful of Zhang Tian on the cloud-watching peak, now had an arrogant expression on her face. She slightly raised her chin and looked down at Zhang Tian as if she was looking at an ant that she could easily crush. We are giving you a chance, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You have to cherish it. Otherwise you will die. She knew that she was no match for Zhang Tian, but once Zeus made a move, it would be a different story. The Palace of Gods had a long history and was closely associated with the Holy See. Wuxia had been poor and weak in recent years. Almost all of its heritage had been plundered and destroyed by the flames of war. After a few major upheavals such as the Four Olds, all kinds of inheritances were almost cut off. How could Zhang Tian compare to Zeus? Surrender? You're just a bunch of ants. How dare you make me surrender? Zhang Tian snorted disdainfully. Stubborn. Then go to hell. Hera was very angry and her charming face abruptly turned cold. Kill him. Grind his bones to dust and send his soul to purgatory. Athena was as beautiful as a flower and as beautiful as the moon. Her appearance could be said to be perfect, but her words were cold and vicious. Kong Techu, you have offended the people and warriors of God. Go to hell. In the name of God, kill this devil of Middle-earth. There were angry roars and shouts. 13 broadswords, each as tall as a person, came slashing down. Light poured down like a waterfall. Clang. These were night swords. Some were filled with blood chi while others were filled with sacred light. They were all made by famous alchemists in the Middle Ages and had been tempered thousands of times. Mysterious scriptures were engraved on them. Each of them could cut through metal and easily kill transcendent grandmasters. They were the precious inheritances of noble families and had a glorious past. Their ancestors were knights of the Temple of God and the Holy See. Some were even members of the Red Crusade and had made great contributions. Their inheritances were still there and their glory was undiminished. Their bloodlines were noble and powerful. These paladins usually had their own duties and properties and rarely worked together to kill enemies. They knew the most powerful overlord in Wuxia was there, so they gathered together to kill Sidoni. The power of their joint attack seemed to be able to crack the world. There were clangs of swords and dragon roars. Everyone's armor was emitting holy light, as if 13 suns were blooming in the sky. It was dazzling and bright, illuminating the night sky. 13 gigantic streaks of sword chi tore through the sky like the Milky Way. What a powerful sword chi and sacred light. Seeing this, many overlords were shocked. Even if the Winter Soldiers develop for another 20 years, they won't be able to catch up with the power of the Temple Knights. Seeing this, the Wolf King, who had already retreated, was envious and a serious look appeared on his face. It's comparable to our attack. Even Hera, the Queen of Heaven, nodded with a smile and praised. This is the first time in 50 years that 13 Temple Knights have attacked together. Last time it was to kill the Duke of Filthy Blood. Jiang Taichu is indeed very strong, but even if he's a half-step human immortal from China with the strength of a human immortal, he can't withstand the combined attack of 13 paladins. Athena was full of confidence after seeing this and snorted. Her facial features were perfect and she was surrounded by a halo. She was as beautiful as a goddess and flashed with the light of wisdom. But she didn't know. Right now, Jiang Tian had broken through a level as if crossing the abyss of heaven, long different from the past. These idiots still don't understand that the difference in level can't be reversed. In response, Jiang Tian shook his head and lightly smiled. Then there was only one movement, a flick of his finger. Chapter 600. Every time he flicked his finger, a wave of dazzling gung metal energy swords flew through the air, forming a dense mass. Numerous gung metal chi swords spread out in the shape of a fan, sweeping out in all directions like the waves of an ocean, boundless like the sea. The clanging sound was like a dragon's roar and thunder, echoing between heaven and earth. This was also the result of reaching the late stage of chi refinement. It turned out that Jiang Tian's finger flashes were less than a tenth of these energy swords. Poof! A burst of bloody light appeared. The 13 divine Hall Knights who possessed ancient bloodlines and were equipped with defensive saint artifacts all shattered in an instant. Whether it was the sword light, the armor, or even the golden greatswords in their hands, they were all reduced to dust in an instant. This was a shocking scene. Jiang Tian only flicked his finger, shattering 13 waves of golden sword light like a nuclear explosion. 13 divine temple knights died in the blink of an eye, turning into balls of bloody light while the others were reduced to dust. This was absolute intimidation. Whether it was the Winter Soldiers or Blue Storm, they all felt their hearts tremble. Only now did they realize that Jiang Tian hadn't used his full strength at all. Otherwise they would have been wiped out long ago. What? He killed 14 divine temple knights in a row. Zeus and the other 2 sovereigns couldn't believe it. Their expressions changed drastically. They didn't expect this at all. These days he had been studying Jiang Tian's information. They all agreed that Jiang Tian should be above the immortal realm, but below the saint and human immortal realm. After the Winter Soldiers and Blue Storm showed no intention of cooperating, he summoned these divine temple knights, thinking that it would be enough to kill Zhang Tian. He just needed to cover the rear. He didn't expect Zhang Tian to be so powerful. He had definitely stepped into the human immortal stage. Otherwise, how could he summon clouds and rain with a flip of his hand? The three core gods were visibly moved. Their hearts were in great pain and they felt like they were bleeding. The divine temple knights were second only to the 12 sovereigns. They were an elite force. One dead was one less and they couldn't be replicated. Zeus, are you and your divine temple knights all so stupid? After killing 13 divine knights in an instant, Zhang Tian's expression was calm. He stood in the pool of blood and said with disdain, "Their cultivations are comparable to the deity realm and half-deity realm, but on the incense cauldron peak, I once killed 11 deities in a row. How stupid. I just don't get it. Ants will always be ants. They can't shake a lion or a tiger. There's no difference between a group and a single one. Kang Teichu, you deserve to die." Being ridiculed by Zhang Tian like this, Zeus was both shocked and angry. He took a step forward and a vast ocean of holy light burst out, blooming all over his body. At this moment, the divine energy in his body instantly became 100 times denser and stronger. Everyone could feel the terrifying pressure. He used a secret technique from the Middle Ages, looked up at the sky and chanted an incantation, "Lightning of order, descend." He raised the golden scepter in his hand, which was embedded with a crystal stone the size of a chicken egg. It was extremely rare and precious, a treasure passed down from the Holy See. At this moment it was constantly flickering. Crack. As the crystal stone flashed, an extremely bright lightning bolt fell from the sky. The scale of the lightning was so large that it almost covered half of the sky above Cass Lake. The lightning in a few hundred meters was intertwined with the lightning of order like an ocean. The ocean of lightning kept gathering and condensing, almost forming a mountain of lightning that enveloped Zhang Tian. This was a terrifying scene. Thousands of lightning bolts fell like a waterfall. Any one of them could kill a transcendent grandmaster and severely injure an immortal state grand cultivator. But at this moment, there were so many lightning bolts that it was impossible to count them all. It was as if there was nothing else in the world except for lightning. Is this the power of Zeus? How terrifying! Blue Storm and the Winter Soldiers were shocked. They called out to their companions and quickly retreated 3 kilometers. This ocean of lightning could turn an area of a kilometer into ashes. They couldn't withstand it at all. Zeus is really powerful. Even the Wolf King Alexander revealed a look of fear. Even the goddess of sea was shocked and felt inferior. She could also summon storms and generate lightning, but it was only 1% as powerful as Zeus. After receiving Zhang Tian's order, Qing Linzi and dozens of green-scale fire owls grabbed the others and flew away to avoid the attack. Zeus is so powerful. He can create an ocean of lightning with one attack. Seeing this, Zhang Qianlei also stood up in shock and looked up, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Zeus's thunder art was as powerful as his. He could easily kill an immortal state warrior and suppress a mortal deity. Secret art of the heavenly master sect, thunder controlling divine art. Zhang Qianlei stomped his feet and his feet sank 5 centimeters into the ground. His face turned red, and his trembling hands struggled to make a mysterious finger incantation, performing the secret technique of the Celestial Master Sect to block the attack for Zhang Tian. However, when he executed the lightning-controlling divine art, he only managed to pull 1/3 of the lightning into the ground. The rest of the lightning was still enveloping Zhang Tian, tearing and strangling. Again. Break. Break. In the continuous roar, Zhang Qianlei's black hair fluttered in the wind. He made a series of hand gestures and pulled more lightning. Puff. This kind of spell consumed a lot of energy. Even though he was a half-step human deity, he was so tired that he spurted out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale and he was about to collapse. "Brother Zhang, that's enough. Let me do it." Facing the lightning bolts, Zhang Tian took a step forward. He looked at Zeus with pride and said, "You are a god. Zeus, you're so ruthless. You're forcing me to use my divine powers. Ha Kang Teichu, in this world no one can break my law of thunder punishment. No one can resist my divine powers, not even you." Looking at the sea of lightning falling, Zeus's face was calm and sacred. He held the scepter in his hand and ordered Zhou Xian. Victory was in his hands. The secret art had been used. It was like pressing the button of a nuclear explosion, waiting for the mushroom cloud to bloom and the enemy to scream. So what if you're a genius? Countless geniuses like you have died in the hands of Lord Zeus. If you resist to the end, you will only be bombarded into powder by the sea of lightning. Athena threatened arrogantly. In her opinion, Zeus's attack was decisive and overbearing, and it was effective. He didn't test Zhou Xian's strength at all. Instead, he used the deadly secret art of the sea of lightning to catch Zhou Xian off guard and finish him in one fell swoop. It was said that during the First World War, Zeus had used this secret art to kill 12 dukes of the kindred in an instant. Dukes of the kindred were equivalent to immortal state warriors or even half-step human deities. How could Zhou Xian resist it? Well, divine powers. Ah, you call a few lightning bolts with a broken stone? You call that a law and a divine powers? Zhou Xian's face was full of contempt. He snorted and said, "I'll show you what a real divine powers is." In the blink of an eye, the sea of lightning was only a few meters away from Zhou Xian. Divine-level divine powers, secret art of space, eternal banishment. Zhou Xian shouted in a low voice. His black hair fluttered like a waterfall and his eyes were full of fighting spirit. He made a series of hand seals. Boom. A pitch-black space suddenly appeared in this area. It was distorted and chaotic, and it was unimaginably deep. It was like a space-time abyss in a crack. It was like a wormhole that could connect to another space-time. Pitch black. Mysterious. All the light disappeared and was swallowed in an instant. There was no reflection at all. What is this? Zeus was startled as an unprecedented sense of crisis welled up in his heart. He had lived for more than 100 years and had never been defeated. He had seen all kinds of secret arts. However, the method that Zhou Xian used was something that he had never seen or heard of before. Even though he was more than 200 meters away from Zhou Xian, he still felt that he was going to be swallowed by the pitch-black space. He felt that he was going to fall into it uncontrollably and be lost forever. Eternal banishment is a divine-level divine ability that involves secret arts of space. Only soul formation cultivators can activate it. Zhou Xian covered the black hole with his hands. His face was expressionless as he sighed and said, "I'm only at the late stage of the qi refinement stage. I can't use it at all. I can only simulate an area with a radius of 10 centimeters. But even if I can simulate a little bit of it, I can achieve instantaneous space transfer and send the lightning into the dimensional space, sealing it forever and destroying it from this space-time." Under everyone's incredulous gaze, the sea of lightning was swallowed by the pitch-black hole in an instant. It was a weird scene. The sea of lightning was huge and the hole was small. However, it gave people the feeling that the sea of lightning was like a thin stream flowing into a scorching desert and was absorbed in the blink of an eye. What? That's terrifying. The overlords from all over the world were dumbfounded. Their bodies and minds were gripped by deep fear and they felt cold from head to toe. Is this a man-made wormhole? Creating a wormhole with a human body and dermic powers is almost mythical. Some members of Blue Storm who were proficient in modern physics widened their eyes as if they had seen a ghost. The divine ability and secret art Zhou Xian used was almost demonic. No matter how terrifying the opponent was, they could be banished. Once they entered the boundless and unknown dimensional space, there was no turning back. Their lives would be exhausted and dry up. "No, I have to go." Zeus' heart trembled when he saw that. A strong sense of danger surged in his heart. Without another word, he summoned a beam of holy light and turned into an earth-shattering stream of light, shooting into the distance. "But you're running away without saying goodbye again." Hera was speechless and quickly retreated. As for Athena and the other overlords, they were even more dumbfounded and could not believe it. Zeus, the invincible overlord, the #1 overlord on the Dark Roll and almost the #1 overlord in the West, just ran away after a single attack? It's useless. When I used this divine ability, your fate was already decided. Zhou Xian smiled faintly and shook his head regretfully. The black hole in his hand vibrated slightly. As expected, Zeus, who had already flown a few hundred meters, felt as if he had fallen into a pool of sticky glue. His body suddenly became sluggish as if the air around him had solidified, preventing him from moving forward. In the end, the holy light under his feet gushed out to the extreme. His body, secret arts, aura, dermic artifacts, and holy items were all pushed to the extreme. He used all kinds of methods, but still he could not move forward an inch. No. At that moment, Zeus began to fly backward uncontrollably. In a flash, he flew to the side of the hole between Xianxia's fingers. Chapter 601. What happened next made their hearts palpitate. It was a nightmare they would never forget for the rest of their lives. It was like a special effect in a movie. First, it was the corner of his clothes, an arm, half of his body, his head, and then Zeus' entire body. Bit by bit he was devoured and annihilated by the deep black hole. No. Finally, with a shrill scream, Zeus was folded into the pitch-black void and exiled for eternity. Except for the scepter that Zhang Tian deliberately left on the ground, not even a speck of dust or ash was left behind. The #1 master on the power rankings for decades, the #1 master in the pantheon of gods, Zeus had fallen. At this moment the whole valley was dead silent. The hearts of all the experts trembled. Their souls were about to leave their bodies because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Kong Techu actually killed Zeus, the #1 master in the West? Wolf King Alexander's body and voice were trembling. His eyes were filled with fear as if he had seen a ghost. The divine power Zhang Tian displayed was simply unimaginable. It was like a real god. Even Zeus was exiled for eternity by him. Who in the world can stop him? The Sea Lady and the Masters of Blue Storm were trembling. They looked at Zhang Tian with fear and horror. This is too scary. Masters at the level of Catherine, the founder of the butterfly skeleton, were so scared that they wet themselves. Zeus was at the level of a true saint. He was equivalent to a human immortal in Wuxia. He had the inheritance of the Holy Sea and was unbelievably powerful. Since the beginning of the first battle he had been undefeated. He had topped the CIA power rankings dozens of times. He was the only master in the world. Moreover, he had the backing of the Holy See, which had a history of thousands of years. He had many secret techniques, sacred weapons, and inheritances. However, such a domineering and invincible master had been exiled to the dimensional space by Zhang Tian and annihilated. At this moment, who would challenge Zhang Tian? You don't want to submit? Zhang Tian asked coldly as he looked at Athena, who was standing in a daze and panicking in the wind. I. Athena felt as if she was being stared at by the Grim Reaper and the blood in her body froze. For a moment she didn't know whether to fight to the death or to kneel and beg for mercy. Then go to hell. Zhang Tian's face darkened and he flicked his finger. The gunmetal chi sword that contained Dao patterns bloomed like a golden flower. It spread out like a fan and the golden light was resplendent and beautiful. However, his attack power was terrifying. The gunmetal chi sword carried an ear-piercing howl as it flew through the air. Bang! Athena's head exploded and her body was pierced through like a sieve. Blood and brain matter splattered everywhere. What? Kill him in one strike. Master Kong, Hera submits to you. Please, Master Kong, let me go this once. The Pantheon will never seek revenge. Heavenly Queen Hera sucked in a breath of cold air, trembling as she knelt down. Her beautiful face lost all color, and her graceful and luxurious face was deathly pale. Her combat power was on par with Athena's. If Zhang Tian wanted to kill her, it would only take a flick of his finger. We submit. Many of the Winter Soldiers and Blue Storm warriors knelt on the ground. They trembled like subjects meeting their king and their eyes were filled with fear. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Master Kong, the Winter Soldiers, submit. If we see Grandmaster Zhang again, we will avoid him and will not fight him. In the end, Wolf King Alexander knelt on one knee and lowered his rebellious head. The Wolf clan was cruel and bloodthirsty. They were very vengeful, united, and persistent. But now his confidence had been shattered. That little bit of vengeance had long drifted beyond the 9 heavens. A warrior clan worshipped the strong the most. Now Zhang Tian had displayed strength that far exceeded Zeus, and it made him fear and worship Zhang Tian. Therefore he submitted without hesitation. Master Kong won. From now on, who in the whole world will dare to be Master Kang's enemy? Seeing this, Lin Fengnian's heart surged and his heroic spirit soared. He felt that today's battle would definitely be remembered in history. The golden armor general formed by Jiang Tian's spirit energy killed one of the 5 giants of the Blue Storm, Professor, who was ranked 6th on the power rankings, in a matter of seconds before declaring war. After that, he killed Ivan the Hammer of Siberia, Prehinova the Ice Witch, Gar the Wolf, and other giants of the power rankings. The Wolf King Alexander and the Winter Soldiers Wolf Clan genetic warriors attacked together, but they were still almost wiped out by Jiang Tian. In the battle against the Wolf King, even if the Wolf King had the help of the Caucasus Grand Shaman Prophet, he was still discovered by Jiang Tian. Using the secret technique of time stop, Jiang Tian cut off one of the Wolf King's arms. In the end, he used a great magical power to open a space passage and banished Zeus to eternity. He crushed the saints and reached the top in one step. Especially the eternal banishment ability, which made Zeus, the strongest in the West, completely disappear from this world. Not even a drop of his remains was left. This was simply miraculous. It didn't seem like a power that a human could display. Controlling time suspension. Connecting to the dimensional space and opening a dimensional passage. Banishing the opponent to the depths of the unknown universe and sinking them into eternal desolation and annihilation. Just thinking about it sent chills down one's spine. Get lost. Jiang Tian said indifferently. Yes. Master Kong will take our leave first. Hera, Wolf King Alexander, the Sea Lady, and the other experts looked at each other with fear in their eyes. They slowly got up and bowed deeply to Jiang Tian. The group slowly dispersed like the tide. Cough, cough. When everyone was far away, Jiang Tian dispersed the ball of emptiness. He covered his mouth with his hand and coughed violently. Every time he coughed, he spat out a stream of black blood. His breathing was weak and his black hair turned gray and withered. In the end, his hair was completely white and his skin was wrinkled. He looked like an old man with one foot in the grave, a lamp about to run out of oil. Jiang Tian, what happened to you? Seeing Jiang Tian on the verge of collapsing, Huang Linger hurriedly flew over and supported Jiang Tian. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Sigh, Brother Jiang has consumed a lot of his energy in this battle. Zhang Qianlei flew over. Seeing this, he was filled with worry. That god-tier skill was forcefully cast by me. Consumed a lot of my primordial qi. Jiang Tian shook his head and sighed. His face became paler. In this battle he had used up a lot of energy 3 times. The first time he used his divine sense to control Thorpe and the other commanders to attack the Glacier Bear. Luckily, he immediately killed the golden armored general and absorbed the professor's spiritual energy to replenish his energy. The second time he used the great skill time suspension. He had only just begun to activate this skill. With his current cultivation he couldn't use it flexibly. The consumption of primordial qi, divine sense and physique was no small matter. The third time he used the god-tier great skill Eternal Banishment. This was a spatial skill that could only be used by soul formation stage cultivators. Even though he had only simulated a small space, it still consumed a lot of his primordial qi. What should we do? Can we use my secret healing technique to heal him? Huang Linger was anxious. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I also have a few great medicines for healing and nurturing the primordial spirit. I snatched them from Chuanzhen sect and Shinnong sect. Zhang Qianlei also took out a few porcelain bottles and stuffed them all to Jiang Tian. He didn't care about those priceless pills at all. Don't worry, I'm fine. Jiang Tian took out a red orchid fruit and swallowed it. His body straightened up and his qi started to recover. The orchid fruit contained surging spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It quickly replenished Jiang Tian's primordial qi and mended his broken meridians. Soon, like a miracle, his body straightened up. His shriveled and sunken skin swelled up and became rosy and translucent. Peace and quiet returned to the forest. Jiang Tian slowly stood up when the sun rose. He had already recovered about 70 to 80% of his primordial qi. Sigh, looks like I still have to work hard for a while. The battle with Zeus was really a close call. Jiang Tian stood up and shook his head with a sigh. Jiang Tian, let's go back home. Huang Linger urged with a nervous expression. Jiang Tian seemed to have aged several decades in an instant. She was really scared out of her wits. She always felt that it would be safer to go back home. Yeah, Master Kong, the military warship that the Chinese military sent to welcome the overseas citizens has already arrived at Sidoni Harbor. At the very least, it's very safe on the warship, Zhu Jiangchao said with an urgent expression. After all, Zhu Jiangchao had once served in the War Dragon Legion, so he knew the significance of the world's most powerful beings. It could be said that in the eyes of Russia, the European Union, and the United States, powerful beings like Wolf King Alexander, Zeus, and the Professor were no less important than strategic superweapons. And now Jiang Tian had severely injured the Wolf King and killed Zeus and the Professor. This would definitely incur the wrath of the major countries and make Jiang Tian a thorn in their side. No. Jiang Tian shook his head lightly and said with a long gaze, "You guys go back home first. I still have a lot of things to do. I have to stay in Sidoni for a while." Huang Linger looked worried. "Don't worry about me. I can definitely protect myself by myself." Jiang Tian looked at the sky leisurely and said, "Maybe it's time to start building my own country." April 15, 2010 nighttime. Sidoni, the lakeside of Cass Lake. Kong Techu killed the Prophet, Athena, and dozens of other powerful beings on the power rankings. He exploded the Professor's head, exiled Zeus, and broke the Wolf King's arm. He single-handedly trampled on Winter Soldier, Blue Storm, and the Pantheon, the three most powerful organizations in the world. When the news spread, the world was shocked. In history, this night was known as the Night of the Falling Stars. The one-armed Wolf King Alexander returned to Russia with a desolate expression. That day, Hera, the Sea Lady, and the others returned to their respective organizations in a daze. All the major countries in the Western world were shrouded in uneasiness and shock. There was a deathly silence. Winter Soldier, Blue Storm, and the Pantheon were all top-notch organizations in their respective countries. But this time, nearly 200 top-notch experts, including Zeus and the Professor, had perished. This was tantamount to a magnitude 12 earthquake, stunning everyone. Chapter 602. Number 1 on the power ranking, the leader of the gods in the Pantheon, Zeus. Number 6 on the power ranking, one of the creators of Blue Storm, Professor. Number 12 on the power ranking, one of the 12 main gods, Athena. Number 8 on the power ranking, the Caucasus Great Shaman, Prophet. Ice Witch. Green Demon. Ivan the Siberian Hammer. Ulfgar. One by one the bright stars in the night sky fell and disappeared. Each and every one of them was a peerless powerhouse that shocked the entire world. But they were all killed by Jiang Tian in a single battle. This lineup that could only be described as heaven-defying was almost completely wiped out. This filled them with fear toward the name Kong Techu, and tore their confidence to shreds. America, Russia, France, England. Many military and super powerhouse management departments held secret meetings overnight to understand and analyze this far-reaching battle and discuss countermeasures. Moscow, Red Square, Kremlin. What? The polar bears were wiped out and the winter soldiers suffered heavy losses. How is this possible? The Northern Army's commander, Yevsky, looked at the wounded Wolf King Alexander and the elite winter soldiers in shock. He exclaimed in disbelief, "Tell me what happened on the battlefield again." Who was Wolf King Alexander? He had the bloodline of the Wolf clan and had killed the Hydra Arcana group during World War II. Like a star, he was undefeated, never withered, and shone brilliantly. He was the guardian of Russia's glaciers. How could such a powerhouse and hundreds of winter soldiers lose to Kong Techu? In fact, many of the powerhouses from the Pantheon and Blue Storm died as well. A hint of fear flashed in Wolf King Alexander's eyes. Even though the battle had been going on for a few days, he still had lingering fears when he thought about it. "Your Excellency, please take a look." A subordinate took out an encrypted computer and placed it on the commander-in-chief's desk. He clicked on a video. There was no need to explain. The winter soldiers were equipped with modern battlefield information collection and transmission systems, and the battle had been recorded. This is spirit power? His spirit power can already condense into a shape? When Yevsky saw the Professor being killed by a golden-armored immortal general, his expression changed drastically and he was shocked. He's so fast. I can't see clearly. When he saw Green Devil, Sea Lady, Snow Wind Witch and Siberian Hammer attack together, but they were all killed by Jiang Tian, Yevsky's majestic body couldn't help but tremble. Commander-in-Chief, this has been slowed down by 10 times. The intelligence officer explained in a trembling voice. In fact, the other battlefield capture systems didn't capture a clear image. Only a few soldiers equipped with high-speed cameras managed to capture the footage. When they saw Zhou Xian killing the winter soldiers who had spent countless resources to cultivate them like cutting melons and vegetables, they were shocked. The corners of Yevsky's eyes twitched. His heart was bleeding and cold sweat appeared on his face. His heart ached. He had spent a lot of money to train these winter soldiers. Each one of them cost a few million USD. But now he was terrified. If Zhou Xian wanted to, he could destroy the entire defense system of the Kremlin in 10 minutes. God help me, what is that black thing? How can it devour such a large amount of lightning? When he saw Lei Hai and Zeus being devoured by the black hole, Yevsky, who had participated in the defense of Stalingrad and grew up in a sea of blood, jumped up from his chair as if he had been stung by a scorpion. He was like a child who had been frightened by a poisonous snake. He screamed, "Can someone tell me where Zeus went? Why did he suddenly disappear?" His whole body trembled and his scream sounded like he was about to cry. Our battlefield scientists have analyzed the video. They think that it might be an unknown substance similar to a wormhole. Wolf King Alexander no longer had his strength and arrogance. His face was extremely serious and his voice was dry. It was difficult for him to speak. The video ended, but the commander-in-chief was even more terrified. He stood there dumbfounded. After a long time he regained his composure. He looked at the heroes with his majestic eyes and said in a low voice, "This video must not be leaked." He said, "It will be classified as a top-secret document for 100 years. Sir." Everyone knew what the consequences would be if this video was exposed. The current world order would undergo a historical change and deviate from its original path. The next moment he picked up the phone on the desk and said with a serious face, "Connect me to Mr. President's office. I need to report something important to Mr. President immediately." After walking out of the building, a winter soldier saw Alexander go straight to the street and stop a taxi. Dong Bing quickly caught up and asked, "Mr. Wolf King, are you not going back to the base? Tell the commander-in-chief for me. From today onwards I will be retired." Alexander tore off his epaulette and took off the national emblem on his hat and handed it to the winter soldier. "Where are you going?" Dong Bing asked with tears in his eyes. He was very reluctant to part with the commander-in-chief. The Wolf King did not answer and let the taxi driver drive. He touched his bare shoulder, but a voice echoed in his mind. "Wolf Mountain. Only by returning to the Wolf Mountain and evolving again can I take revenge for this broken arm." United States Pentagon. In a magnificent conference room. The professor is dead. The Green Goblin is also dead. After listening to the report, Keynes threw his teacup on the floor and slammed the table. He roared like an angry lion. 30 years. For the first time in 30 years, Blue Storm has failed. In the entire world, no one dares to challenge Blue Storm's authority because that is equivalent to challenging the entire American military. That damned Kong Taechu. Perhaps we should be friendly to Kong Taechu. The Sea Lady reminded him gently, after all, he has never set foot in America, and Blue Storm is also part of the American military. At least not in terms of sequence, right? No. General Kane's eyes flashed with a ferocious killing intent. He said in a deep voice, "Kong Taechu will either submit or die." The great United States, the great American military, has never bowed to any individual or force. We will not allow such a threat to exist. But how can we kill him? This is an almost impossible mission. The Sea Lady frowned with a serious expression. Normal tanks and cannons can't hurt him. This was already proven when Kong Taechu broke through the 28-man mixed army and air brigade. The Sea Lady shook her head and sighed. And now Kong Taechu seems to be even stronger. He can control the commander's thoughts. Professor said that mind control has a range. He can only control the mind within a few dozen kilometers using the brainwave enhancement room. A major general of the army pondered for a long time before saying, "Perhaps we can kill him with ground-penetrating missiles or intercontinental missiles." While Kong Taechu is a citizen of Wuxia, such large-scale weapons cannot be used. A CIA official said in a deep voice. Everyone nodded. Wuxia was a sovereign country and it was a superpower with a modern army. Releasing such weapons of mass destruction was tantamount to starting a war. No one dared to do so. Miniaturized electromagnetic weapons and laser weapons suitable for individual combat might be able to do it. The person in charge of Bell Laboratories, who had close ties with the American military, said after pondering for a moment. I don't think there's much hope. The Gold Battle General's brow furrowed as he said, the black hole he created can swallow everything. For a moment the conference room was dead silent. The discussion reached a stalemate. Wait. General Keynes, who had been gloomy, suddenly smiled and said, what if Kong Techu stays in Sidoni? If he stays in Sidoni, then of course we can use weapons of mass destruction. A hawkish official said. Starting a war with Wuxia, which has nuclear weapons, is tantamount to starting World War III. But Sidoni is just a poor and backward small African country. Of course we can use it. But why would Kong Techu stay in Sidoni? Someone asked, puzzled. Professor Zhang Ru, do you think there's such a possibility? General Keynes turned his head and looked at an old man with white hair and a pair of black-rimmed spectacles. He was wearing a long coat with a buttoned front. Who is he? It seems to be his first time attending a meeting. Someone asked, puzzled. Keynes introduced, this is Professor Zhang Ru, an academician of the American Philosophical Society, a famous sinologist, a visiting professor of East Asian history at the University of Michigan and Harvard University, and a proud disciple of the great scholar of Wuxia, Qian Mu. He introduced Professor Zhang Ru and said in a deep voice, at the same time he has an unknown identity. He's a real martial artist, a transcendent master and a senior consultant of Blue Storm. Professor Zhang Ru's aura was as deep as the sea. He pondered for a moment and said cautiously, I've carefully studied Kong Techu's information. His cultivation system seems to be completely different from ordinary martial artists. But he's very much like the legendary Immortal cultivators, and the Immortal cultivators pay attention to wealth, companionship, methods and land. Professor Zhang Ru said, the so-called land is a blessed place, a place where mountains and rivers flow in a strange direction, implying the heavenly Tao conforming to the laws of nature, hiding wind, gathering qi and nurturing spirit qi. In ancient Eastern legends, cultivators like Kong Techu can only obtain good fortune, absorb spirit qi and ascend to immortality by occupying a blessed place, reaching the pinnacle of cultivation. Sidoni is covered in primeval forests and once nurtured blood orchids. I'm afraid it's the blessed place that Kong Techu needs. It's very likely that he'll stay. There's an old saying in Sun Tzu's Art of War, know thyself and thy enemy and thou shalt win 100 battles. Professor Keynes smiled proudly. It seems that we should persuade Russia and the European Union to work together to create an environment for Kong Techu to stay in Sidoni. The more he thought about it, the prouder he became. He said excitedly, as long as he stays in Sidoni, he'll be a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Don't forget, in the 60s we relied on strong ships, cannons, missiles and laser weapons to pursue tens of thousands of miles and kill dozens of immortal state warriors. We'll make them tremble in fear when they hear about the United States. He slammed the table with a gloomy and cold look in his eyes and shouted loudly, him Kong Techu is nothing. Don't forget we have nuclear weapons. A modern army that can annihilate all the experts. We must kill Kong Techu. He must die. Chapter 603. London, England, Century Building, Lambert Street. John Sars, the director of the British MI6, slammed his fist on the table and said angrily, that damned Kong Techu. He killed Zeus. How are we going to explain this to the President and the Holy See? Up until now he has killed Zeus, Athena and Apollo, 12 main gods, and 14 divine knights. This is the worst loss the Palace of the Gods has suffered since its establishment. We have to take revenge 10 times, 100 times. Mr. Director, I understand how you feel. Hera shook her head with a hint of fear on her face. But Jiang Taichu's battle prowess is extremely powerful. With the Palace of the Gods, I'm afraid we'll never be able to turn the tables. She reported everything one by one. Are we going to ask those true descendants of the gods to take action? Director John murmured with a grave expression, but we've finally escaped their control. You mean the God's Judgment Department? Hera had a complicated expression on her face. Legend has it that they're true descendants of the gods. Once they appear, they'll cause the rise of the gods and the world order will be in chaos. They can take action in the name of the Holy See. Director John was in a dilemma and his expression was grave. Suddenly his phone rang. It was an internal call from his secretary. General Keynes of the United States Department of Defense has invited you to the United States for a meeting to discuss how to deal with Kang Techu. At the same time, the National Defense and Special Intelligence Departments that had received the secret information were paying attention to this news. With the allocation of funds, teams of experts were quickly formed. Research and analysis teams were also operating quickly. On this day, Kang Techu's name resounded in all the major countries. No one could ignore his existence. At this time, Jiang Tian had already repaired his damaged body and recovered to the peak of Qi refinement stage 7. He even showed signs of breaking through to stage 8. This was the advantage of the Gong metal divine body. Raising and tempering his cultivation in battle as long as he could not kill them, would make Jiang Tian even stronger. Qing Linzi, didn't you say he was injured? When they heard that the old dragon's life and death were unknown, they returned to the Changshu tribe and were stunned. The old dragon had actually recovered. What was even stranger was that it had grown 4 claws, and the scales all over its body had turned purplish gold. This fellow was sitting in the middle of the pond, one of his claws digging his nose in a carefree manner while the other hand was roasting a monkey over the bonfire. How did he change? Lin Fengmian exclaimed. This is exactly the same as the legendary true dragon. Zhang Qianlei couldn't believe it. In 1934 he slaughtered a flood dragon in Inko's Tiantai village, which was exactly the same as the old dragon. However, he had never seen a true dragon with dragon claws in his 100 years of life. I don't know either. Qing Linzi was also confused. This old dragon's recovery ability is too strong. Also, how did you grow claws? Only Jiang Tian's eyes flashed with brilliance. He was overjoyed. It's actually a 9 transformation purple gold true dragon. This was a mutant from the prehistoric era of the universe. It's extremely powerful. If it's lucky enough, it can surpass the human race and become a god the Arch. This kind of prehistoric mutant had 9 transformations. Every time it underwent a lightning tribulation, it would transform once and become several times stronger. It was probably because he was electrocuted by Zeus yesterday, which was equivalent to a man-made lightning tribulation. Jiang Tian sighed. The old dragon's luck was too good. Before the first transformation, its appearance and aura were no different from an ordinary flood dragon. How could Jiang Tian have thought of that? It could be said that even now he couldn't accept it. How could such a prehistoric mutant appear on a dead planet like Earth, which was barren of spiritual energy? What a fortune! What a fortune! In the future he could ride the purple gold true dragon and fly through the sky and Earth. Even in the cultivation world he would be very awe-inspiring. He could have this mount. I didn't eat humans. I ate monkeys. Seeing Jiang Tian, the old dragon was shocked. His face was full of fear as he hurriedly carried the roasted monkey to the back. Eat. Jiang Tian waved his hand and smiled. Old dragon, your performance yesterday was very good. As expected of my servant. Compared to Master Old Dragon, I still have a long way to go. The old dragon said flatteringly in all seriousness. At that time I fought with Zeus for 300 rounds and stomped on him until he was screaming and begging for mercy. Then he fled toward Cass Lake. I couldn't be bothered with him. I thought that you were there, and since you were there, wouldn't you kill him in minutes? He sighed in melancholy. In the end, but Zeus still fell. Before this, he would nod and bow when he saw me and call himself human pet. Who knew that after not seeing him for a few decades he actually became arrogant? If you don't listen to the old dragon you will suffer. The old dragon is really eloquent. He praised both of them in one sentence. Lin Fengmian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Shirley and Qing Linzi were speechless. Old dragon, can we not be so exaggerated? The evacuation ship sent by Wuxia's military arrived and brought many Wuxia refugees onto the ship. According to Jiang Tian's arrangements, Huang Linger, Lin Fengmian, and the others also returned to China. Zhang Qianlei, Zhang Tian, and the members of the medical aid team stayed in Sidoni. The people in charge of the evacuation operation were actually members of the Battle Dragon Special Forces, supported by a fleet of the Navy. Master Kong. Battle Dragon reporting to you, awaiting your instructions. On the dock, seeing that Zhang Tian came to send off Huang Linger and the others, Violent Dragon and the others immediately showed respect to Zhang Tian and saluted him in a standard military salute. Although Zhang Tian had already dismissed Battle Dragon as the chief consultant of martial arts. But in the hearts of Violent Dragon and the others, Zhang Tian would always be their teacher. It was Zhang Tian who raised them to a realm that they didn't even dare to imagine before. That respect and gratitude would never change. This time the 8 of them went deep into Sidoni and fought bloody battles. They successfully escorted 81 Wuxia refugees to the Wuxia embassy. They fought all the way and broke through the complicated defense line formed by the government army, the rebel army, and the resistance army, sending them to the ship. However, Zhang Tian and the Cass Lake refugee camp rescued more than 200 Wuxia refugees, more than them. Moreover, it was Zhang Tian and Zhang Qianlei who took over the Cass Lake camp and defeated the government army that bought them precious time. They couldn't help but admire Zhang Tian. Thank you for your hard work, brothers. Zhang Tian patted Violent Dragon's shoulder and helped him straighten his collar. His eyes revealed a trace of kindness. However, I've already resigned, so there's nothing to guide you. Obey the orders of your superiors and protect the lives and property of the Wuxia refugees. It's your duty. Go home. Yes, Master Kong. We promise to complete the mission. Violent Dragon grinned and saluted Zhang Tian again with his comrades and the Navy officers on the fleet. They boarded the warship. Master Kong, Master Zhang, thank you. You are our benefactors. We will miss you forever. Master Kong, Master Zhang, take care. Countless Wuxia refugees waved to Master Kong and Zhang Qianlei, tears of gratitude rolling down their cheeks. Sigh, I didn't do anything. Zhang Qianlei was polite, but a warm current surged in his heart. After sending everyone away, Zhang Qianlei smiled and said, Brother Zhang, are you staying here to be an emperor and turn Sidoni into your base? No, I want to turn this place into an independent, democratic, rich and powerful modern country. Zhang Tian said seriously. You can forget about it. You don't wake up early without benefits. How can you be so great? Zhang Qianlei glanced at him disdainfully. However, he agreed with Zhang Tian's idea from the bottom of his heart. Back then he was the Daoist master of the Republic of China. His status was so high that he could drink and chat with Baldi Jiang. However, history was turbulent and the regime changed. He could not even protect the orthodoxy of the Daoist master of Longhu Mountain. He could only live under someone else's roof and become a consecrator of the Song and Lu families. It seemed that only by supporting or even directly controlling the regime and making the regime rely on you instead of protecting you could you gain the initiative. The capital, San Juan, presidential residence. The new leader of the rebel army, Field, and the new leader of the Free Resistance Army, Isaac, were quarreling. 3 days ago, the supporters of the rebel army, the Polar Bear mercenaries, were beaten to a pulp by the 2 of them. The rebel army leader, Crown Prince Bobby, and the Free Resistance Army leader, Sidoni, had both died mysteriously in the battle. The entire Sidoni was once again in chaos. The 2 of them immediately used bloody methods to suppress their competitors and became the leaders. Yesterday morning, the masters behind the 2 of them, the Russian and American politicians, called the 2 of them to say that they would give up on their military aid and would not interfere in Sidoni's internal affairs. Field and Isaac each had tens of thousands of troops. Neither of them gave in and both wanted to sit on the throne of the president. The new alliance government formed by the rebel army and the Free Resistance Army also broke down. At this moment the 2 of them sat at 2 ends of the meeting table. They looked at one another with hatred and hostility. Behind each of them stood a few burly men with heavy machine guns on their shoulders. Their waists were wrapped with brass bullet chains looking like Rambo. Beside them was a coffin. The 15-year-old Crown Prince Bobby laid inside quietly. Half of his head had exploded, and his pure gold crown and military uniform were covered in blood and brain matter. A few flies were lying on top of it, greedily sucking on the juices. It did not look like 2 warlords were discussing the future of a country and deciding the future and fate of a country. Instead, it looked more like two mafia bigwigs who were fighting for territory and negotiating with each other. General Field had followed Crown Prince Bobby to form a government in exile in Russia and Europe. He had also studied at the Russian Army Military Academy. He was influenced by the fighting race and had a strong personality. He held a thick cigar in his mouth and said proudly, "No matter what, Sidonia has always been a constitutional monarchy. A king is something that cannot be lacking. If you want to be the president, you must first be conferred by the king. However, Crown Prince Bobby has unfortunately died in battle. We are deeply sorry for the death of Crown Prince Bobby." Isaac sipped his coffee casually. He did not look like he was apologizing at all. He was gloating. "Maybe we should change the constitution and adopt a democratic republic. I will be the president and you will be the vice president." Chapter 604. You are the culprits who killed Prince Bobby and you still want to be the president? What a joke. General Field slammed the table and the Desert Eagle beside him jumped up. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "If you insist on going about things the wrong way, then let's fight. We will fight for the freedom of the people of Sidonia. We will fight for the honor of the king. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Who's afraid of who?" Isaac took out his gun and pointed it at General Field's head and shouted, "You no longer have a king and a prince. This game is over. Who will support you?" Click. Everyone loaded their guns and aimed at each other. The atmosphere became extremely tense and a gunfight was about to break out. "Put down your guns. The construction of Sidonia still needs you to work together." A pure American English voice sounded, and a Chinese youth with black hair and black eyes walked in with a 4 or 5-year-old black child. Behind them, there was a middle-aged man wearing a strange green robe, looking around arrogantly. Isaac looked at Zhang Tian in surprise and said disdainfully, "Who are you? Who let you in? This is the honorable presidential palace. Didn't you Chinese withdraw from Sidonia?" "My name is Zhang Tian, the guardian of His Highness the Crown Prince." Zhang Tian stood in the middle of the conference table. Little Arthur moved a chair over and Zhang Tian sat down lazily. "His Highness the Crown Prince? Wasn't Prince Bobby killed in the explosion?" Isaac asked, puzzled. "Yes, His Highness Prince Bobby unfortunately died in the battle, but his son is still alive. According to the Constitution of Sidonia, he is the heir to the throne, and you all have to work for him." Zhang Tian pushed little Arthur out. Are you kidding? Prince Bobby is only 15 years old. How can he have a 6 or 7-year-old child?" Isaac was obviously a proud and arrogant guy. He pointed the pistol at Zhang Tian's head and said proudly, "Are you crazy? Get out of here. Don't think that I won't dare to shoot you just because you are Chinese. Sidonia is in chaos now. No one knows who killed you. I am the guardian of Crown Prince Bobby and King Bobby has no children." Field also widened his eyes and slammed the table angrily. "I have been following His Highness Bobby since 10 years ago. I can testify that this little bastard is definitely not Bobby's son." Isaac grinned. "You want to negotiate with us just because you brought an imposter? Dream on. Don't even think about meddling in Sidonia's political power. Get out or I'll kill you." For a moment, everyone present pointed their guns at Zhang Tian, shouting and threatening him. What answered them was a 10-meter-long golden wind blade. A golden wind blade violently slashed out. The heads and necks of all the warriors present were chopped off. Their heads rolled to the ground one after another, and hot blood spurted out from their necks like fountains. A huge hole that was over 10 meters long appeared on the wall opposite of Zhang Tian. The special cement and granite were all cut apart like tofu. Seeing this scene, Field was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. He slid from the chair and fell to the ground, paralyzed like mud. More than a dozen guards who heard the commotion rushed in from outside. Before they even raised their guns, Zhang Qianlei had already covered them with a lightning net. Boom. Within a second, all the guards were turned into ashes and drifted in the air, disappearing from this world. They are the gods of the other races in the legends. Isaac suddenly realized, and his eyes were filled with fear as if he had seen a ghost. He quickly threw the pistol on the ground and kowtowed, "God, don't kill me, please don't kill me. Now do I have the right to negotiate with you?" Zhang Tian looked down at the two kneeling men, touched little Arthur's head and asked with a smile. Yes, yes, of course. Field and Isaac nodded like chickens pecking at rice. Then little Arthur is now Crown Prince Bobby's son. Do you agree? Zhang Tian asked gently. Agree. Agree. The two were afraid that they would be killed by Zhang Tian if they hesitated for even a second, so they scrambled to express their stance. His Majesty Arthur will ascend the throne soon. We will form a new parliament, a new cabinet, and attach ourselves to His Majesty Arthur Jr. to establish a democratic civilization, a prosperous and powerful new Sidonie. Zhang Tian got up and took the crown of King Bobby. This was a pure gold European-style crown, and it was inlaid with dazzling colorful gems. It was heavy in his hand and it must be very valuable. Casting the clear dust Dao technique, he cleaned the blood and brain matter of the crown. Zhang Tian put the crown on little Arthur's head and said with a smile, "Little Arthur, from now on, you are the king." Little Arthur, who was wearing a crown that was obviously bigger than before, looked at him in confusion, but in the end he clenched his fist and said, "Uncle Zhang, I will listen to you. Your Majesty, your personal military officer is willing to serve you." Field quickly got up and took off King Bobby's clothes, shook off the brain matter, took off his sword and put it on little Arthur. He had a flattering smile on his face. Field and Isaac quickly introduced Sidonie's current situation to Zhang Tian. President Cuba established a dictatorial government, and the parliament had already been dissolved. According to the constitution, the president should be elected by the parliament, and then be conferred by the king. Then a cabinet would be formed. Zhang Tian did things quickly and decisively. He immediately gathered the original members of the parliament and held the king's coronation ceremony. The kingdom was only half a kilometer away from the presidential palace. The originally magnificent palace had long been turned into ruins. Smoke billowed and there were bloodstains and corpses everywhere. After Zhang Tian killed Thorpe and Crown Prince Bobby, Field and Isaac led their own armies to seize control of San Juan. Several fierce battles broke out here and all the members of the royal family were killed. Hearing that the new crown prince was going to rebuild the parliament members all rushed here. This group of people were members of the upper class of San Juan. They were elites and most of them had studied abroad. They were different from the warlords. They had a strong sense of patriotism and wanted to change Sidonie's poor and backward appearance. They wanted to build a new, rich and democratic country. Other than the parliament members, there were also the chiefs of the major tribes. They controlled the faith of the people and had the most support. Now they were the new parliament members. This was Zhang Tian's idea. The new parliament had to represent the interests of all classes in Sidonie. Let's welcome the new crown prince, Prince Arthur's guardian, Mr. Zhang Tian, to speak to everyone. Field bowed to Zhang Tian, then stood up and grandly pushed Zhang Tian out. Zhang Tian stood on the podium and spoke in fluent English. Everyone should be clear about the situation in Sidonie. The United States, Russia, and the European Union each supported the warlords, and the warlords fought for more than 10 years. And 3 nights ago, the military mercenary companies of the United States and Russia launched a terrorist attack near the Cass Lake camp, killing Prince Bobby, General Thorpe, and the cabinet ministers. Zhang Tian's gung-metal divine body had reached phenomenal success. He was as handsome as a god with a masculine aura. His divine sense was strong and immortal spirit chi was dense. He also cast a little charm spell and immediately showed a strange charm, completely mesmerizing everyone. When everyone heard Zhang Tian's words, they were all incomparably convinced. They were greatly affected and their emotions were stirred up. Zhang Tian glanced at everyone and said with a cold and solemn face, "They want to put Sidonie in a state of chaos and even turn it into a puppet regime of the superpowers. This is something that every conscientious Sidonie government who loves the motherland can't agree to. All races, tribes, and overseas citizens, we all hope for a peaceful and stable situation." In the ancient East there is a wise proverb, "A family can't be without a leader, a country can't be without a ruler." I suggest that according to King Bobby's last words, we welcome the heir of King Bobby, Prince Arthur, to the throne. After saying that, Zhang Tian helped little Arthur over. Poor little Arthur was trembling in fear. He was wearing a blood-stained white military uniform with a pocket-sized sword at his waist. His big eyes were filled with panic and he didn't look like a king at all. However, most of the people present knew little Arthur. San Juan was like a fourth-tier city in the country, and it was only that big. Which of them hadn't been to the San Juan International Hotel? And which of them hadn't been to Mulligan's Mercenary Manor? Little Arthur had been a doorman at the San Juan International Hotel, and he had been a follower at Black Bear Mulligan's Mercenary Manor. How could they not know this clever child? They could vaguely guess that little Arthur had nothing to do with Prince Bobby. Bobby was 15 years old and he had a baby at 10 years old. It was too early for him to mature. Everyone stared blankly at little Arthur on the stage and then whispered to each other. Little Arthur was a little flustered and his palms were sweating. He held Zhang Tian's hand tightly. Zhang Tian gently patted little Arthur's shoulder. This child had seen the world and he quickly calmed down. Zhang Tian swept a glance over everyone, and a divine sense pressure rumbled out as he said indifferently, "Could it be that everyone disagrees?" Zhang Tian's divine sense pressure fell from the sky. The others felt as if they were being stared at by a terrifying god, and their hearts trembled. "We have no objection. Greetings, Your Majesty King Arthur." The chief of the K tribe, a skinny old man who looked like Mahatma Gandhi, took the lead and kowtowed to Zhang Tian and Arthur. The chiefs of the Longevity tribe and several other tribes also followed and kowtowed. Seeing that the representatives still didn't express their opinions, Field rolled his eyes and secretly said, "This Master Kong is a real god. He was the one who led Master Zhang Qianlei to defeat the government army and the dictatorship. Master Kong, we have no objection. Greetings, Your Majesty King Arthur." Hearing Field's words, many of the counselors were shocked and terrified. Their souls left their bodies as they rushed to kneel down and kowtow. Besides, they had no other choice. Now that all the members of the royal family had died in the war, and they couldn't change the constitution, they had no other choice but to let Arthur ascend the throne. Zhang Tian nodded with satisfaction and said loudly, "As everyone knows, the parliament has been dissolved by the president of the puppet government, Kuba, who tried to implement a dictatorship. But all of you here are the original old representatives. Even if you are not a representative, you are still respected tribal leaders and intellectuals with knowledge, culture, and ideals. This is also the reason why King Arthur invited you to participate in the coronation ceremony. I solemnly request you to re-establish the parliament. You can elect a speaker in 5 minutes." As soon as these words came out, there was an uproar. Chapter 605. Many counselors and celebrities looked at each other in disbelief. Actually, when Zhang Tian pushed little Arthur out, these old counselors thought that Zhang Tian wanted to use little Arthur as a puppet and establish a dictatorial government. Just like how the United Kingdom controlled President Cuba, Russia controlled Crown Prince Poppy, and the Americans controlled Thorpe. But they didn't expect that Zhang Tian actually kept the parliament. This fully showed that Zhang Tian wasn't a dictator. He really wanted to turn Sidonia into a modern democratic country. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to dig his own grave. After a short period of shock, they quickly felt a heavy sense of responsibility and honor. The king, the royal family, and the cabinet were all wiped out. Now Sidonia was in chaos. It was even more chaotic than when the warlords were fighting. At this time, if these intellectuals who had studied and studied abroad did not stand up, when were they going to do so? Did they want Sidonia to be in chaos forever? The tragedy of the genocide was still vivid in their minds. Anyone with a conscience in Sidonia didn't want such a tragedy to happen again. In less than 5 minutes, they elected the president of the parliament. At this time, no one was thinking about fighting for power. The newly elected president was a professor from San Juan University named Andy. This person had studied at the International Relations Institute of Wuxia Yanjing University. He spoke Beijing dialect very well. It was convenient for him to communicate with Zhang Tian. Because the president didn't have a suitable candidate, Mr. Andy temporarily acted as president of Sidonia. While they were in the middle of the election, Zhang Tian said to Field, "Field, call the people from the national TV station over. Immediately hold the coronation ceremony." "Sir Godfather, the national TV station has been destroyed in the war." Field shook his head helplessly. At this time, a blonde woman with blue eyes walked over and said with a smile, "Master Kong, I'm Meryl, a former reporter from the Associated Press. But now I'm willing to serve you. Maybe you need a professional spokesperson." "Serve me? Why?" Zhang Tian asked curiously. I know you. You're the Master Kong who shook the world. You once defeated the 28th Japanese Mixed Brigade. Meryl was wearing a reporter's outfit, loose camouflage pants and high-top boots. Her figure was very sexy and she looked very handsome. Her blue eyes flashed with admiration as she smiled. Jiang Tian was not surprised by this. That battle was witnessed by many Japanese civilians. There were even some photos and videos left behind. Although the Japanese officials kept a tight lid on this matter, there were no reports of it in the newspapers. But I'm afraid that the Japanese will also leak this information to the foreign media. Perhaps Meryl had also gotten the information. Meryl's figure was sexy and hot, and she had a passionate and unrestrained personality. Without waiting for Jiang Tian to ask, she quickly spoke. In 2003, I reported on the U.S. military's abuse of prisoners of war. I was severely punished by the U.S. government. My journalist license was revoked and I was fired from my newspaper. I was slandered and persecuted by the remaining pictures. I've worked for Sidoni for many years. I know about America's support for the Freedom Resistance Army. I've witnessed the warlords slaughtering civilians and carrying out genocide policies. I sympathize with Sidoni who's suffering from the flames of war. You're a righteous soul formation stage cultivator, while America represents evil. I want to support you with practical actions. Also, I have an informant in the CIA. I can get a lot of their top-secret information. Then you're even more suitable to be an informant. Jiang Tian laughed heartily. Informant? Surely I can do it too. Meryl shrugged and said with a smug smile, do you know about the Darknet forums? You're very popular there. And I'm the famous observer. So you're the observer? Jiang Tian was slightly surprised. Actually, we're a team made up of more than 30 experienced reporters, former informants, computer hackers and international informants. Our dream is to uncover the cruel truth of this world, expose the hypocrisy of democracy, and free the oppressed people of all mankind. I know almost all the top-secret information of every country. I've heard a lot about you. Jiang Tian was immediately impressed by Meryl. He shook hands with her and said, from now on we're comrades. At this moment, Meryl was very much like a self-media person in the future. She had 2 locally hired assistants, a camera, a DSLR camera and a livestream van. She made a living by selling battlefield news to the media all over the world in exchange for royalties. Meryl connected the camera to the livestream van, and the video could be sent to the media all over the world through satellite signals. She also contacted a few war reporters in Sidoni, such as BBC, Bloomberg, NBC and so on. The reporters came one after another. What happened next would be unforgettable for all of them. Daoist, the chief of the K tribe who was already over 70 years old, was helped down. He even changed into a bright red robe with golden edges. President Kuba was controlled by the British and promoted the religion of the Holy See. But now that the colonists were gone, it was unreasonable for him to still believe in their religion. He had to believe in the local religion. Little Arthur originally believed in the Church of Creation. After a vote in the Parliament, the Church of Creation was naturally listed as the national religion. Chief Daoist was originally the priest of the Church of Creation that the K tribe believed in. Now he was the archbishop. At this moment, the military attendant on the stage had already prepared a tray covered with red velvet. On the tray was the golden crown. This was custom-made by a famous jewelry company in Italy when Sidoni declared independence from the colonies under the British in the 1960s. It could only be used when a king ascended the throne or during an extremely important occasion. It was very meaningful. The coronation ceremony was very simple. Under the witness of the parliamentarians and celebrities, the new king Little Arthur knelt on one knee. The archbishop held the crown with trembling hands and placed it on Little Arthur's head. He said solemnly, "Divine power in the name of the beginning." The new Archbishop Daoist secretly decided that he would learn English or Chinese and rewrite and explain the ancient scriptures of the Church of Creation. In his opinion, Kong Techu was the sky, the universe, the reincarnation of the God of creation or his noble and glorious messenger. He was the God who protected Sidoni. Some people might think that this was stupid. However, from the perspective of the Archbishop, Jiang Tian was able to defeat the 3 gods of the Changshu tribe, control thunder and lightning, shake the army, create space, defeat the palace of gods, protect the K tribe, suppress the warlords and save Sidoni from the war. If this was not a god, then what was a god? Then the new king, Arthur, held an ancient scripture and constitution in his hand and swore to the beginning that he would work hard to revive Sidoni and build a new democratic, strong and prosperous country for the rest of his life. In fact, the members of the royal family were all dead. No one knew the real coronation ceremony. This was completely planned by everyone on the spot. However, from the perspective of the procedure, the archbishop, the scripture, the crown and the constitution were all there. No one could find fault with it. The most important thing was the great significance it contained. The image of the coronation ceremony had been broadcast to the whole of San Juan, Sidoni, and the whole world through Merrill's live broadcast vehicle. No one knew who started singing, "God Bless San Juan." In fact, this song was originally, "God Bless San Juan," but the lyrics were immediately changed. The song was solemn and stirring and the tone was impassioned. Many people shed tears of excitement. The media reporters frantically pressed their shutters and used their cameras to record this historic moment. In the past, when he was in danger, he was enthroned in a pool of blood and ruins. He swore to revive the small poor country in Africa. This was a rare explosive news that would definitely go down in history. Today we are all Sidoni's people. An emotional BBC reporter sobbed and used a satellite phone to send the news and pictures to his boss. After the coronation ceremony, Zhang Tian immediately called Zhang Qianlei. Old Zhang, send little Arthur to the San Juan International Hotel. Protect him closely and set up a few defensive formations. What about you? Zhang Qianlei frowned. I'll go to Sidoni and take a look at the terrain. I'll look for suitable candidates. The next step is to elect a president, form a cabinet and set up defenses. Zhang Tian said. I've been in seclusion for decades. I'm bored to death. Now that I've finally come out, it'll be boring for me to sit in the hotel. I want to take a look too. Zhang Qianlei glanced at Zhang Tian and said reluctantly, besides, you've killed the professor and Zeus. We've taken care of the warlords supported by the major countries. Who would dare to cause trouble? Don't think that we're safe after defeating Blue Storm, Winter Soldier and the Pantheon. In fact, the war has only just begun. Zhang Tian glared at him, frowned and said with a serious face, the super overlords are eyeing the blood orchid, but these countries are also eyeing the rich mineral resources in Sidoni. They won't give it up easily. Besides, the major countries have been suppressing the Immortal State Warriors. For decades, the Immortal State Warriors have obediently submitted to the major countries and dared not fight against them. But now that we've supported the new Sidoni regime, it's tantamount to challenging the major countries and challenging the international order they have established. I suspect that the military of the United States, the European Union and Russia won't sit back and do nothing. What you said is possible. Zhang Qianlei's face turned cold and he nodded in agreement. Only when one reached his level could one understand how terrifying the Immortal State Warriors were and how complicated the secular powers' feelings and attitude toward Immortal State Warriors were. Chapter 606. In the long river of history, there had been immortal state masters who controlled the politics of small countries and supported puppet regimes. One word from them would bring prosperity to a country, and one word from them would destroy a country. However, since the rise of modern weapons, especially nuclear weapons, the secular power had declared war on immortal state masters. In the 50s and 60s, many powerful countries had hunted down blood breeds, dark wizards, and all kinds of talents all over the world in the name of a joint military show. Strong ships and sharp cannons went into battle, chasing them until they fled in panic like stray dogs. Blood flowed like rivers and heads rolled. Immortal state masters either died, hid like rats, or sought the protection of big countries like Wolf King and Professor, bowed their heads and lived under the eaves. In short, the cultivation world was silent. At this point, the secular power had won the battle between immortal state masters and immortal state masters, establishing a solid foundation for violence. For 60 years, immortal state masters were almost forgotten. Now Zhang Tian's strong rise, especially his support of Sidoni's new regime, was bound to cause a chain reaction. There were a few possibilities. One was that those immortal state masters who had been dormant for decades and finally made the CIA and KGB forget about Zhang Tian would rise up and rebel, or even follow Zhang Tian. However, this would inevitably lead to a counterattack from the big countries. The other possibility was that those deity realm experts hated Zhang Tian to the bone and wished for nothing more than to tear Zhang Tian into a million pieces because they were remembered by these great powers once again and were hunted down by them. From this point of view, Zhang Tian was right. The war had not ended but had just begun. After 3 days of preparation, 3 CA-313 helicopters imported from Wuxia took off from the king's mansion and flew north, then south. They planned to visit all of Sidonie in 3 days. Accompanied by King Arthur, Merrill, Zhu Jiangchao, Lu Kuo Yuan Kersen Field and Archbishop Dashiel, Zhang Tian began to inspect the land of Sidonie, which had just been extinguished from the war. The 2 helicopters behind were filled with food and medicine. There were also dozens of Wuxia medical aid teams following them. When they reached the large tribes, they landed to help the poor and those who were injured in the war. Sidonie has a total area of 320,000 square kilometers. The northern part is the Sidonie Plateau and mountainous areas. Mount Surad is the highest mountain with an altitude of 2,400 meters. It is the highest mountain in the country. The central and southern parts are plains, but most of them are primeval jungles that haven't been developed before. They cover 90% of the land and have a tropical climate, so they are rich in natural resources. Zhu Jiangchao had worked here for several years and was familiar with the place. He had a detailed understanding of all kinds of data and he spoke tirelessly. Sidonie's GNP in 2009 was a pitiful $10 billion, and its per capita GNP was only $348. The growth rate for several consecutive years was 0 or even negative. It's almost the poorest country in the world. After flying for half an hour, they soon arrived at a mountainous tribe. The tribesmen welcomed them warmly and kowtowed to Zhang Tian and the others. This place was located in the highlands and mountains north of Sidonie. It was barren and even more backward than the K tribe. Most of them didn't have houses and lived in caves. Some even lived on trees to prevent the invasion of wild beasts. The tribesmen didn't have clothes to cover their bodies. Most of them simply used banana leaves and cloth to cover their lower body. The adults and children were all skin and bones. Many of them were infected with infectious diseases. They leaned against the shade of the trees weakly. Zhu Jiangchao and Yuan Kersen immediately took action. They diagnosed them, fed them medicine, and even performed some simple surgeries. They also distributed food and drinking water to them. If there were any difficult diseases, Zhang Tian would directly treat them. The Immortal doctor's methods had the effect of reviving the dead. He took out a pill and dissolved it in a large bucket. After everyone drank a bowl, the plague and serious diseases instantly disappeared. Benefactor. The medical team is our benefactor. This must be a god, he actually cured my malaria. The tribesmen were so moved that tears streamed down their faces. They knelt on the ground and spoke in their native language in English. This is the beginning, the only god of Sidonie. He is protecting the poor people of Sidonie. Archbishop Dashiel, who was like Mahatma Gandhi, stepped forward and distributed scriptures to the villagers. He emotionally recounted the deeds of Zhang Tian in Sidonie. The beginning is the sky, the god, the universe. He is also the creator of the universe, our guardian. These medicines and food were all brought by him. Believe in the beginning and you will receive blessings. You will gain eternal life. Archbishop Dashiel stood on the high ground and waved his hands passionately. Tears streamed down his face from time to time. He looked like an old swindler and had the demeanor of Tang Xiaozi. The beginning. The beginning, please protect us. After the villagers heard this, they became even more respectful. They all kowtowed as if they had seen a true god descending. These photos can shut the mouths of the Americans. This is true humanitarianism. Merrill, on the other hand, held the camera and frantically pressed the shutter, recording the touching scenes. Her assistants were also filming the whole process. These videos would be made into a special feature and would be broadcasted on Sidonie's national television station and other major media outlets around the world. Merrill was very good at news battles. Didn't the Americans like to talk about human rights? Let me show you. The helicopter flew and stopped. After visiting 3 tribes, more than half of the medicines and food had been distributed. Sigh, I think we only need to visit 2 more tribes and all the medicines will be distributed. Zhu Jiangchao shook his head and sighed. This place is too poor and backward. There is a lack of medicine. Master Kong, this country is a hot potato. Yuan Kerson's eyes also revealed a worried expression as she said in a deep voice. The reason is that education, technology and culture are backward. In the 70s, when they had just become an independent country from a British colony, the West German government started a literacy campaign and the literacy rate reached 50%. But in the 90s, President Cuba established a dictatorship and started a civil war. Almost all schools were closed and the illiteracy rate reached 85%. There was almost no technology or industry. The infrastructure is very backward. The country is mainly covered by roads. There is only a railway that Wuxia helped in the 70s. But the roads and railways have been in disrepair for a long time. Inland transportation mainly depends on elephants, camels and cars. Because of the civil war, the security situation has deteriorated. Prices have skyrocketed and daily necessities are in short supply. More than 75% of the population does not have safe drinking water. According to the World Bank, the average life expectancy in 2004 was 47 years old and the mortality rate of children under 5 years old was 22%. Don't worry. I have confidence. Jiang Tian smiled faintly. Master Kong should be like this. Captain Zhu Kerson. Don't be too pessimistic. Lu Kuo was excited. He slapped his thigh and introduced with a smile. According to our preliminary investigation, the highlands and mountains north of Sidoni contain a large amount of magnetite and rare earth ores. But because of the war between the warlords for many years, they have not been mined. Just this part of the ores is worth trillions of dollars. Now, under Master Kang's leadership, Sidoni is stable. If these ores are developed, it will be enough to make Sidoni filthy rich and create another Vale, Rio Tinto, BHP Billiton, and those other large mining companies will pale in comparison. Originally, the Sidoni branch was not valued by Jinning Group. After all, Sidoni was in a state of war and did not have the conditions to develop it. But it was different now. The Sidoni branch might become the most important overseas branch of Jinning Group. While they were talking, the helicopter landed on a flat ground on Mount Sudra. Jiang Tian got off the helicopter and looked around. As far as his eyes could see, there was a lush primitive forest. The forest was filled with white fog and spiritual qi. There is no need to develop this place. Jiang Tian shook his head gently and smiled. It can be used as a training base. The faction is here. What? Master Kong, you don't want trillions of magnetite? Lu Kuo was stunned. It's just trillions. What's the big deal? Jiang Tian smiled disdainfully. Sidoni's main industry will be the medical industry. To be exact, it will be the longevity industry. At the side, Fidel hurriedly took out a small notebook and wrote it down. Grandmaster Zhang's instructions were like golden words. It's true. Master Kong is a medical family after all. He has an advantage in this development. Lu Kuo nodded, but he did not agree. The market value of Yaowang Group was only 200 billion Wuxia dollars. Because of the high liquidity and frequent transactions, the market value of listed companies had a premium, which meant that the real value of the company was discounted. Even if Yaowang Group expanded 10 times, it would not be as cost-effective as mining. Having a mine at home was the way to go. He did not know that Jiang Tian's assets were in the trillions and he still had money to spare. Other than that, South Korea's Xianxia, Japan's Mitsui, and many other tycoons were under his control or were his allies. If that was the case, the funds that could be mobilized would be more than $1 trillion. It would not be difficult to turn Sidoni into a modern country. If he set up a few spirit-gathering arrays here and supplemented it with various pills to slow down the aging process, it would be enough to push an ordinary person to 150 years old, attracting the attention of the world's tycoons. If each person handed over 3% of their personal assets, Jiang Tian's income would be more than a few $1 trillion. Moreover, if these tycoons wanted to move to Sidoni, they would have to bring many advanced technologies and job opportunities. This would enrich Sidoni's real economy. It would be more effective than mining. This place will be called Tianqing Mountain from now on. It will be where my faction is located. Jiang Tian said. Zhang Tian's consideration was even more far-reaching. After this battle, the United States, Russia, and the European Union will definitely see me as a thorn in their side. Zhang Tian took a deep breath of spirit energy and looked down at the mountains with a long gaze. He sighed in his heart. I should use this mountain as a base and build my own force. A true cultivation sect must have as many grandmasters and immortal state warriors as there are rain. Together with the green scale fire owl, various dharma artifacts, and the Quillian weapons developed by fourth uncle, I will build an army of cultivators as my direct army. Master Kong, you know that we have released a lot of information about you on the dark web. In between the inspections, Meryl smiled. Grandmaster Jiang, I wonder if I can release the footage of your battle at Koss Lake. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.